The timing of the battle was very important. What should we do now? They're about to catch up. Mu Yi was anxious. He Yan looked back and said, I'll hold them back. Mu Yi was worried. Can you do it alone? Let me accompany you. No need. He Yan patted him on the shoulder. You take this ship and stay in your position with the other ships. If the Utho warships see our ship, they will most likely come to deal with us. You must protect the ship. She paused and said, Protect yourselves. But, before Mu Yi could finish his words, He Yan had already stepped on the bow of the ship and swept towards Maka's ship. Miss He, why is he going alone? The deputy soldier was surprised. Xiao Ju said, Let's do it. Bang. The small boat collided with the large ship, causing it to tilt slightly. Maka's face was ashen. Why are you still here? He laughed sinisterly. You want to stop a chariot with just a few thousand people? Since you want to die so much, this general will send you on your way. He waved his sword and shouted to his people, Warriors, let's fight. The two sides stood together. Although the Jiang City army was outnumbered, they were not afraid. He Yan and Xiao Ju, who were in the lead, mingled with the people around Maka. He Yan had a whip with iron claws. When the iron claws were attached, they were very good at smashing ships, but they were also good at smashing people. When she waved her whip, a person would be knocked down. However, the whip was not a sword. When it pierced a person, it could not be retracted for a while. More and more Yudo rushed up, and they were already behind her. She kicked away a person in front of her, and a strong wind came from behind her. He Yan dodged to the side, and a sparkling sword blocked in front of her. Xiao Ju's back was facing her, and the sword in her hand was dripping with blood. She pulled autumn wine out from the Yudo's chest and reminded softly, Be careful. Commander, He Yan said, Let's fight together. The two of them stood back to back, one holding a sword and the other holding a whip. They had their backs to each other, and at this moment, they trusted each other wholeheartedly. They had never fought together against an enemy before, but in the face of life and death, they had a wonderful tacit understanding. It was as if they understood each other, and their hearts were connected. They did not need to remind each other of their actions, and they naturally understood each other's intentions. For a moment, the Yudo could not get close to them. The deputy commander pushed away a Yudo, and when she turned around, she saw this scene. She thought for a moment, and only said, What is the background of this Miss He? She is so skilled. She did not rely on Xiao Ju to save her, or Xiao Ju to protect her. She was able to cooperate with Xiao Ju at the same time. Not only did she not hinder Xiao Ju, she even cooperated with her with ease. General, this woman is so powerful. The trusted aide said to Maka. Xiao Huaijin was powerful because he was the commander of the right army of Dawei, General Fengyan. He had never heard of this woman's name, and she did not look old. How could she be so powerful? Could it be that there were many talented people in Dawei's army, and Xiao Huaijin was not the only one with such skills? For a moment, Maka regretted volunteering to come to Jiang. He saw that Jiang did not have many soldiers, and there was only one woman, Mu Hongjin, in charge. He thought that it would be easy to take down Jiang, and that was why he took the credit. Who knew that he would meet Xiao Ju, and a troublesome woman? When these two people worked together, their skills were already outstanding. There was also the Jiang City Army. Just a few days ago, the spy reported that the Jiang City Army had not fought for many years, and their formations were old. They were no match for the Yudo. When they fought today, they realized that the Jiang City Army's morale was high, and their morale had not decreased. Even their formations were different from before. Although the Jiang City Army was reduced by more than half, it was unimaginable that the 150,000 Yudo soldiers could not take down the city immediately. Instead, they had suffered a lot. Increase the number of people. Charge. Maka gritted his teeth as he looked at the man and woman surrounded by the Yuto. I don't believe that they can defeat my 150,000 soldiers. The mast on the ship did not move, but the flag hanging on it started to sway. It was not a slight sway like before, but a movement that could be seen, like a bird spreading its wings. The wind is blowing. He Yan could not hide the excitement in his voice. Commander-in-Chief, the wind is really blowing. It was not a gentle breeze, but more like a cool breeze. Perhaps it would become a strong gale or a strong gale. Furthermore, it's the southeast wind. He Yan smiled until his eyes turned into crescents. He was especially happy. It's the southeast wind, Commander-in-Chief. Xiao Ju glanced at him and said, "We can lure them into the trap now." He Yan looked at him, and a smile flashed across his face. He jumped up and said, "Let's go." The two of them broke out of the encirclement and jumped onto a small boat of the Jiang City Army as if they were exhausted. The Jiang City Army on the boat paddled with all their might, as if they wanted to take them far away. "Wanna run?" Maka sneered and waved his hand. "Chase after them. We must take these two's heads today." At this juncture, the number of Jiang City Army soldiers was decreasing. It was obvious that Xiao Huijin and the woman were outnumbered. Maka had doubts in his heart. Was Xiao Huijin the kind of person who would abandon his troops and run away? However, this doubt was quickly washed away by the joy of the imminent victory. No matter how brave and invincible they would not be able to turn the tables with so few people. The people of the Great Way liked to say the most, "As long as the green hills remain, one need not worry about firewood." Perhaps the two of them saw that the situation was not good, and wanted to escape first, hide their strength, bide their time, and then make a comeback. Maka was going to chase them to the end today. His trusted aide was still a little hesitant. "General, don't chase a cornered enemy. Why don't we wipe out the remaining Jiang City Army first? The right way is to go ashore and enter the city." "What do you know?" Maka said contemptuously. "The Jiang City Army is already in shambles. If we capture Xiao Huijin..." Greed flashed in his eyes. "The king will only reward me generously. This is a battle achievement that will go down in history." Everyone in the Wu Tuo kingdom knew that he had led troops to attack the city. In the end, not only did he take down Jiang City, but even Xiao Huijin, who was feared by the world, died under his sword. Speaking of which, this life was worth bragging about. Moreover, he had suffered a lot at the hands of the woman who pretended to be Mu Hongjin. Maka was a person who would seek revenge for the smallest grievance, so he could not be reconciled. For a moment, he only hoped to kill them all. Chase. The small boats moved quickly in front of them. Under the vast and mighty canal, there were countless unremarkable submerged reefs. The merchant ships that passed by were already familiar with this and avoided them from a distance. However, these Yudo might not know. They might not know what kind of sharp weapons were hidden in the small boats that were scattered all over the place. "General, do you see those small boats?" the trusted aide asked Maka. Dozens of small boats appeared around the surface of the water. These small boats seemed to belong to the Jiang City Army, but the people on them were not as large as the Jiang City armies. They were scattered at the ends of the boats. The faintly discernible distance seemed to be harboring evil intentions. The ominous premonition grew stronger and stronger. The trusted aide said, "General, is this an ambush? Do you want us to..." "What ambush? If you're afraid, go back to your hometown as soon as possible. The Wu Tuo army does not raise cowards." Maka kicked the person beside him away. "You call it an ambush with just these few boats? Are you trying to make me laugh my head off? We have so many boats and so many people. This is not an ambush, it's a suicide mission. I think it's a good idea. Get ready. When they get closer, shoot the arrows." The trusted aide thought about it and felt that Maka's words made sense. These Jiang boats were like moths to a flame. Even if they rushed over from all directions, they did not seem to have any chance of winning. He Yan's signal had already been sent out, and the other ships led by Mu Yi from before were all approaching this side. He Yan turned to look at the Wu Tuo army's boats behind him. They were getting closer and closer. At the same time, the wind was getting stronger. The flags on the boat fluttered in the wind, and the joy in her heart rippled out layer by layer. She could not suppress it. "Should we?" He Yan asked Xiao Ju. Xiao Ju's mouth twitched. "Yes." The two of them ordered the Jiang City soldiers around them to stop paddling. "Quickly enter the water." Plop, plop, plop. The sound of people falling into the water came one after another. The people on the Wu Tuo army's boats were stunned. They only asked, why did they all jump into the water? Prepare the pitchforks. Even if they fall into the water, we can still fight, Maka said gloomily. They just thought that they had exhausted all their abilities and were at the end of the road. Yen smiled slightly. With one foot on the bow of the boat, he took out a flint. A very soft sound came from her hand, but no one took it to heart. The girl's eyes were bright, and she smiled slyly. I'll give you a big gift. Take it. A spark streaked across the sky like a shooting star. The next moment, it landed on the boat. At the same time, the sound of Jiang City's soldiers falling into the water could be heard from all directions. The spark landed on the opened curtain and the dry firewood covered in oil. With a loud boom, a huge ball of fire exploded on the boat, almost illuminating the entire sky. The Wu Tuo army's boats were quickly engulfed by the fire. The wind became stronger and blew the entire flame towards the Wu Tuo army's boats. The commotion on the canal seemed to have spread to Jiang City. Lin Shuanghe walked out of the Chui residence's backyard. He looked into the distance and muttered to himself, "What's that sound?" Beside him, Zhongfu was also listening, but he could not answer his question. After a while, Zhongfu looked at Lin Shuanghe and asked, "Young Master Lin, are you really going to stay here?" He already knew Lin Shuanghe's true identity. The so-called elegant butler Lin really did not exist in this world. At least, he had never seen one in his life. This young man looked refined and refined. He heard that he was a doctor, but he was different from Xiao Ju and He Yen. He did not have any martial arts. Why would he stay here if he did not evacuate with the people? There are still so many sisters in this residence, Lin Shuanghe said with a smile. If I leave, who will protect them? Zhongfu was speechless for a moment. He spoke as if he was very powerful. Cui Zhongqi's wives are still in the residence. Even my sisters dared to stay, so how can I escape alone? I am a man. Lin Shuanghe waved his fan, his smile as confident as before. A man should protect the ladies. Second concubine looked through the window at Lin Shuanghe, who was talking to Zhongfu. She rested her chin on her hand and said, "This young Master Lin looks so weak, but I didn't expect him to be so manly at critical moments. If I were 10 years younger, so what?" Concubine Wei glared at her. "You still have the mood to think about these things at a time like this?" "I was just saying it casually." "Sister, why are you so agitated?" Second concubine stretched lazily. "It's hard to say if we can live past today. Can't you just let me dream for a while?" Pay, fourth concubine said. "Second sister, don't jinx it. Laoi will definitely defeat those Yudo. Not only can we live past today, we can live past tomorrow, and we can live for a very, very long time. Didn't Laoi say that young Master Qiao Huanqing is actually De Wei's General Fengyun? With General Fengyun, we can win this battle no matter what. Don't worry." She spoke quickly and anxiously, as if she was very confident. However, it was unknown whether she was comforting others or convincing herself. Third concubine loved to cry. Tears had swirled in her eyes for a long time. When she heard this, she finally could not hold it in. She cried and said, "So what if he's General Fengyun? How many years has it been since we fought a war in the city? We don't have as many soldiers as commoners. He's not a god. I'm still so young. I don't want to die. Laoi hasn't doted on me for long. I'm so scared." "Don't cry." Concubine Wei shouted with a sullen face. She saw third concubine shrink back and still could not hold back her tears. Finally, she sighed and handed her a handkerchief. Her voice softened. "What are you afraid of? Although we're concubines, we're still people of the middle cavalry manor. Without Laoi protecting us at the front, we'll be dragging him down by crying and wailing in the back. Even if we're concubines, women, we're still women of the middle cavalry manor. We must have integrity and not fear death. If we win this battle and Laoi comes back alive, we'll celebrate. We'll prepare food and soup as a reward to reassure him. If we lose, Laoi won't be able to come back. We won't beg for our lives under the Yudo's hands. The rope is in our hands. Everyone will die." It's just a matter of sooner or later. For better or worse, we sisters are in the same place. Even if there's no way to survive, we can take care of each other on the road to the Yellow Springs. What are you afraid of? She said. Second concubine giggled. Tears seemed to flash in her eyes. She smiled and held third concubine's hand. She only said, "That's right. We sisters are in the same place. What's there to be afraid of?" Third concubine sniffled and wiped away the tears on her face. She refused to speak. Fourth concubine looked out the window and muttered, "It's windy." "It's windy." Mu Hongjin looked at the trees outside the window. At first, it was just a small breeze. Then it grew stronger and stronger. It blew the willow tree branches in all directions, as if they would be uprooted in the next moment. A layer of shallow waves appeared in the pond. Inside and outside the Wang Fu, it was empty except for a few old people who had always been by her side. She had let those who could leave. As for the commoners who followed them out of the city, if they could leave, then they could. There was no reason for them to be buried here in vain. What was that sound just now? She asked the maid beside her. The maid shook her head. That's true. Mu Hongjin sighed. How would you know? That loud sound was hair-raising. It could be heard both inside and outside the city. It seemed to have come from the direction of the canal. The servants who had been sent to gather information had come twice. They both said that the Yuchuo soldiers were currently fighting with the Jiang City army led by Xiao Ju on the water. The Yuchuo soldiers had not yet come ashore to enter the city, but more than half of the Jiang City army had been lost. The situation was unbalanced, and they were no match for the enemy. This battle had truly been difficult for Xiao Huaijin. Mu Hongjin thought to herself. She somewhat hated her own incompetence. If only she knew how to mobilize troops and break through enemy lines, then she would not have to sit in this empty Wang Fu, futilely and powerlessly waiting for an end. If the city fell, she would be buried with it. If the city survived, she would continue to live. It seemed that this was all she could do right now. The wind blew in from outside the window and blew the mirror she had placed on the soft seat with a bang. It fell to the ground. Mu Hongjin was startled. She walked over and picked up the mirror. It had already fallen once, leaving a small crack on the mirror. This fall was even more vicious than last time. The crack covered the entire surface of the mirror. She had only just reached out to touch it when the mirror shattered. The shattered mirror fell onto the soft carpet. It was like a jewel falling into the sky, but also like a memory scattered in the depths of her heart. Her heart suddenly ached. She bent over, and for some reason, tears streamed down her cheeks. In the depths of the forest, the white-clothed swordsman was surrounded by several dozen Yuto. Blood dripped from the long sword in his hand. His white robes had long been stained red with blood. It was impossible to tell if it was his or someone else's blood. Go! The Yuto around him surged in wave after wave. This person's swordsmanship was superb. He was able to take on 10 of them by himself, and he had yet to fall. However, he had also suffered many injuries. His arm had been slashed by the Wudua's saber, leaving a long scar on his arm. His leg was also bleeding, but his posture remained light and graceful, like the clouds and mist on Chiyun Mountain, elusive and elusive. At the same time, he was like an immortal descending from the 9th heaven to experience a tribulation. He was always calm and always smiled. He made the massacre around him look like an immortal. He was like the heroic young swordsman in the stories of the past. With a sword and a zither, the sky was high and the land was wide. However, heroes also had times when they were defeated. Lu Buwang's eyes gradually began to blur, and his vision became blurry. He had spent a lot of energy setting up the formation just now, and it had affected his old illness. At this moment, he was just an arrow at the end of its flight. However, the longer he could hold on, the more peaceful Jiang City would be. The wind had gradually picked up. The smile on his lips grew brighter and brighter, as if he had listened to a girl in a red dress teasing him many years ago. He pretended to be bored, but he would turn his back and secretly smile without realizing it. A blade slashed at his face. Lu Buwang jumped to avoid it. As he moved, something flew out of his arms. He subconsciously reached out to grab it and held it in his palm. It was a silver bracelet. There was a circle of small wild daisies engraved on the edge of the bracelet. Because of the passage of time, the not-so-delicate edges had been worn down. It still had the body temperature of a person and was slightly hot. Someone once said to him, "This is called a happy bracelet. Give it to your sweetheart and wear it for the rest of your life." The 17-year-old Mu Hongjin begged him, "Young hero Lu, quickly give me one." However, he replied coldly, "She's not my sweetheart." However, when he went back to the mountain with Yushu and met the old woman again at the foot of Qian Mountain, he took out money to buy that bracelet. At that time, Lu Buang didn't understand why he did this. He tried to convince himself that he was afraid that Mu Hongjin would be bored waiting in the inn alone. When she came back, she would definitely put on an act. So this bracelet was a gift to shut her up. Unfortunately, he wouldn't have a chance to give it to her for many years in the future. Perhaps there had been a moment, or perhaps there had been many moments, when he really wanted to be with that beautiful and bright girl for the rest of his life. Poof! A long saber stabbed him from behind, and the tip of the saber pierced through his chest, as if it wanted to cut open his heart and let him see clearly who his sweetheart was. The Wudao behind him laughed heartily and said, "This head is mine. No one can snatch the military merit from me." There was a noisy roar of laughter around. Lu Buang fell down. When he fell down, he was still holding the happy bracelet tightly in his hand. The wind was like a girl's hand, gently stroking his eyebrows. He lay on his back and no longer had the strength to stand up. In a trance, he seemed to have returned to many years ago when he went down the mountain for the first time. Chapter 158. The canal was engulfed in a sea of fire and smoke. Yuto's screams, panicked cries, and Maka's orders were mixed together. In the end, they were all silenced by the crackling sound of wood being torn apart by the fire. This east wind came late, but it was strong. As if knowing that they were late, they desperately refused to stop. Thousands of Yuto soldiers' boats were connected by iron hooks. The fire came quickly, and before they could escape, they were all engulfed in the sea of fire in the blink of an eye. It was rare for a smart Yuto to be slightly further away. They used all their strength to cut off the hooks, but the smoke was thick and they couldn't tell the direction. There were submerged reefs everywhere. If they accidentally bumped into one, the boat would capsize. At this time, the small boats of Jiang City's army showed their advantage. The small boats were agile and connected to the water. Even if they couldn't tell the direction, they were still Jiang people. Everyone knew the water and left easily. Even if they were affected by the fire, Jiang people knew how to swim. They dived into the water early and swam to the shore. Most of them were unharmed. The Yudo soldiers were not so lucky. Not many of them could escape from this fire attack. Even if they did, their morale was in chaos. They were probably defeated before the battle even started. Under the water, He Yen and Xiao Ju swam to the shore. The moment the fire was lit, Xiao Ju had already grabbed her and jumped into the water. The spring water was still cold. He Yen knew how to swim, but when the water reached her eyes and nose, her body unconsciously stiffened. It was as if she had returned to the Su family and was drowned in the pond by He Wanru's people. Because of this, the sky above the water was getting farther and farther away from her. She was forever left underwater, unable to see the light. In the beginning, he could still barely hold on, but after a period of time, it became more and more difficult for him to force it. His body's discomfort was always quickly dealt with, but the fear in his heart, the shadow left behind by a certain incident, was not something that could be easily forgotten. She gradually fell behind Xiao Ju. Xiao Ju, who was in front, seemed to have sensed something. Seeing He Yen fall behind him with a rarely seen pained expression, she couldn't help but be slightly startled. He Yen had never mentioned in front of Xiao Ju whether he could swim or not, but he definitely could. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to hold on until now when he jumped off the boat. But now, it seemed that he was afraid of water. This was also possible. For example, people who had been burned by fire in the past would later avoid fire when they saw it. A man who fell from a horse and got injured would never get back on a horse again, even if he was an expert horseman. When they reached the mouth of the gourd, they were all impetuous and didn't notice the hidden danger at all. Cui Yueji's archers who were lying in ambush in the dark shot arrows and caught the Yudo off guard. At this moment, there were not many Yudo left, and they were fighting with the 5,000 soldiers of Jiang City arranged by Cui Yueji. I wonder what the situation on the river is like. Cui Yueji was thinking in his heart when he suddenly saw someone come over and say loudly, "Sir, the east wind is rising. Military Governor Xiao has already attacked the Yudo's ships with fire. The Yudo is now in a mess and has been defeated." Really? Cui Yueji was overjoyed. God bless Jiang. On the other side, when the Yudo heard this, he was immediately in a mess. While instructing the soldiers around him not to believe the enemy's trick to disturb the morale of the army, he couldn't help but let his imagination run wild. They were originally arranged to go ashore first, and the army would arrive later. However, as soon as they went ashore, they encountered the white-clothed swordsmen. They were entangled for a long time just by walking out of the formation. It had been so long, and the army should have arrived a long time ago. Why was there no movement now? Their morale was boosted at the first spurt, then weakened at the second, and exhausted at the third. Cui Yueji's side became braver as they fought, and the Yudo soldiers retreated in defeat. "Boys," Cui Yueji shouted, "fight with me." On the bank of the canal, the Yudo soldiers who had escaped from the Sea of Fire were fighting fiercely with the soldiers of Jiang City. When He Yen rushed over, the sound of swords clashing could be heard all around. Cui Yueji wasn't here. The several dozen people who had set the ship on fire with He Yen had spontaneously followed He Yan's lead. The Yudo soldiers no longer have the advantage in numbers. "At least, the difference isn't too great now," He Yen said. The fire had buried most of the Yudo. Although there were still more Yudo soldiers left than Jiang City, the difference wasn't too great. Besides, their morale is definitely low right now. We can use this opportunity to catch them all in one fell swoop. He Yen tightened his grip on the whip in his hand. "Go!" On the edge of the ship, she immediately saw Xiao Ju surrounded by Yudo. These were Maka's trusted aides. It seemed that Maka hadn't been able to escape when the fire had been set. When the remaining aides saw that their master was gone, they knew that they would die if they returned. Thus, they all turned their attention to Xiao Ju. They wanted to drag her down with them. If they could kill Xiao Ju, they might be able to make up for their mistakes. The Yudo were packed densely together, taking turns to attack Xiao Ju. He Yen rushed into the crowd with his whip, knocking down a person with each strike. He then kicked away the person in front of him and retreated to Xiao Ju's side. Xiao Ju was slightly surprised. "Why are you here?" "Of course I'm here," He Yen said. "We agreed to advance and retreat together. I'm still hoping that if I succeed this time, the Commander-in-Chief will report me to the Imperial Court and give me an official position or something." Xiao Ju sneered. "In your dreams." He Yen slowly held his whip horizontally in front of him. "Wouldn't it be a waste if I don't even dream in my dreams?" He rushed into the crowd. This group of Yudo was extremely cunning and cruel. They only attacked Xiao Ju and He Yen with all their might. It was as if they had gone crazy and wanted to fight to the death. The remaining soldiers of Jiang City and the rest of the Yudo were mixed together. They couldn't get close at all. He Yen was slightly annoyed. The number of soldiers of Jiang City was too small. Moreover, these Yudo were no longer fighting a war. They were just gathering to kill Xiao Ju and her. "I have to get rid of their leader first," she thought to herself. While she was thinking, she saw that the group of Yudo suddenly increased the intensity of their attacks. Logically speaking, since they were killing people and she had caused them to suffer such a great loss, they shouldn't ignore her. However, their momentum was directed at Xiao Ju alone. What were they trying to do? He Yen became vigilant. He subconsciously retreated and wanted to warn Xiao Ju. However, just as he turned around, he heard a boom. The small boat of Jiang City soldiers that was docked, together with Xiao Ju and the Yudo, exploded with a loud sound, just like the fire boat in the middle of the river just now. He Yen was also blown to the shore by the explosion. She immediately got up and looked into the distance. Her mind buzzed and she shouted, "Xiao Ju!" The fragments of the boat were everywhere, and the water was violently churning from the explosion. Someone came to pull her hand and pulled her back. It was Mui. Mui said, "This is a firearm. I've heard that some of the Yudo's craftsmen know how to make firearms, but it's extremely rare. I didn't expect them to bring one with them today. They must be targeting military governor Xiao." He Yen had also heard of firearms before. However, it was very difficult to make firearms and it cost a lot of money. Even if they could make 10 of them, they might not be able to use them. The Fuyue army had limited funds back then, so they gave up in the end. The Yudo probably didn't have many firearms, otherwise, they could have thrown dozens of them at the beginning. Presumably, seeing that Mako was no longer here, he followed the idea of both sides suffering losses and dragged Xiaoju down with him. Damn it. She gritted her teeth and turned around to run in the direction of the explosion. "Miss He." Mu Yi pulled her back and said anxiously, "There are still fragments of firearms around. It's very likely that there will be another explosion. It's very dangerous for you to go now." He Yen shook off his hand. Mu Yi wanted to persuade her again, but when he saw her expression, he suddenly paused and let go of her. He Yen turned around and ran into the water. There were more and more Yudo around them, blocking in front of He Yen. She simply swung her whip and sneered. She jumped up and snatched the long swords from 2 Yudo's hands. With 2 swords in hand, she didn't hesitate at all. As she pulled out her swords, the enemy fell down. Her hands and feet were tied. She couldn't use her sword to save herself from exposing herself, but at least she could use her swords. But what was the use of this? If only she could be a little earlier, a little earlier. He Yan's heart suddenly choked with sobs. There was nothing on the surface of the water, only fragments of the floating ship. Xiaoju's figure was nowhere to be seen. That person, the person who pulled her out of a desperate situation, the person who remembered her birthday, made her longevity noodles, took her to see fireflies, the person who laughed at her and indulged her in the spring, how could she disappear here? She had to get to the surface of the water quickly and find Xiaoju quickly. Lin Shuanghe was still in Jiang. If she could find him quickly, there might still be hope. There weren't many people in this world who were good to her. The one who was the best to her must not die. The Yudo was too much of a hindrance. He Yan's eyes were cold and sharp. The long swords in her hands danced, dazzling the onlookers. Her footsteps didn't stop. She just desperately rushed to the place where the explosion occurred. Mu Yi looked at the girl's figure and only felt that there was nothing in the world that could stop her. Her hands were as agile as an eagle's and as sharp as a knife. He didn't know that women could be like this. The Yudo pounced forward, but He Yen waved them away. Just like this, she pressed forward, the corpses of the Yudo soldiers behind her. Finally, she reached the surface of the water. "Xiaoju," she shouted. No one answered. "Xiaoju." He Yen bent down and tried to fish something out of the water. But when she raised her hand, only water flowed through the gaps between her fingers. There was nothing left. It was empty. She was a little confused, so confused that she couldn't tell what the uncontrollable sadness in her heart was. This feeling was like the day she suddenly became blind. It was like the day she was pressed into the water by He Wanru's people. She was about to lose something very important. It was so sad. "Xiaoju," she muttered. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from behind her. "What are you shouting for?" She suddenly turned around and saw a young man in black armor striding over. There seemed to be a hint of mockery in his cold eyes. From the shore to the shallow water, there were Yuto bodies that she had just killed in anger. The corpses fell to the side. It was clear that the knife technique was exquisite and cruel. They were all killed with one strike. The young man raised his eyebrows. His gaze fell on the long knife in her hand that was dripping with blood. After a moment, he looked at her with a faint smile. So fierce. The next moment, the girl suddenly rushed over and threw herself into his arms. Her hands tightly wrapped around his waist, and she buried her face in his chest. The Jiang city soldiers behind them on the shore were stunned. Xiaoju's body stiffened. Her eyes were slightly annoyed. The next moment, he closed his mouth because he felt the body in his arms trembling violently. She had jumped into the water earlier and almost suffocated herself in the water. Her inner clothes were already soaked, and the heavy armor on her body looked exceptionally cold. It made her seem especially fragile. Xiao Ju tried to endure it, but in the end he couldn't help but pull her face out of his arms. "What are you doing? I'm not dead yet." He sneered. Hien stared at him in a daze. This person was standing in front of her, alive and well. He was alive and well. He was right in front of her. Tears suddenly fell from her eyes. Chapter 159. The girl's tears were like fragile dewdrops as they rolled down her cheeks. For a moment, they seemed to be scalding. Thinking about it carefully, this was the first time Xiao Ju had seen Hien cry. He was startled and thought to himself, in the end, she's still a girl. No matter how powerful she is normally, it's still a bit scary to see her flesh and blood splatter on the battlefield for the first time. But, the last time she fought with Raida Musi, her reaction wasn't as intense as this. After thinking about it, Xiao Ju finally frowned. He softened his voice and comforted her. "It's okay now. Don't cry." He looked around and saw that the Yuchuo soldiers were only left with remnants of their last struggle. Cui Yueji's men had already arrived, so the rest were nothing to be afraid of. "Commander-in-Chief." Slave Fei rushed over and looked at Hien. He was also stunned for a moment. "How long are you going to stand here and cry?" Xiao Ju felt a headache coming on. Hien quickly wiped away her tears. She knew that she had lost her composure. Even though the situation was already decided, this wasn't the time to be sad. She turned around and said, "Sand got into my eyes just now. It's okay now. Let's wrap it up." Her voice still sounded like she was crying. This excuse was so lame that it felt perfunctory. Xiao Ju couldn't be bothered to expose her. When she turned around and walked back with her sword, he suddenly grabbed Hien's arm. "What's wrong?" Hien looked back in confusion. Xiao Ju didn't say anything and only looked behind her. Hien followed his gaze and saw a few drops of blood slowly flowing down from her waist into the river, leaving only a trail of blood. She was stunned and reached out to touch her back. The pain that had been dull for a long time seemed to have returned. She had probably charged into the Yuchuo soldiers in anger and only attacked without defending. The Yudo had taken advantage of the opening and injured her. Later, she had been in a hurry to find Xiao Ju and didn't realize that she had been injured. The armor was heavy, so it wasn't obvious that she was injured. If not for the blood dripping down, it would have been hard to notice. Hien felt the pain, but it wasn't unbearable. It wasn't like he hadn't suffered injuries more painful than this in the past, so he didn't feel anything. Instead, he adjusted his armor and said indifferently, "I might have been cut. I'll go back and bandage it." "Go back to Lin Shuanghe now," Xiao Ju said. "We don't need you here." Yudo's momentum was gone, and Mako was dead. Thousands of ships were burning on the river, and Cui Yueji and the remaining soldiers of Jiang City were more than enough to deal with the remaining soldiers. However, Hien didn't have the habit of letting his subordinates work while he himself rested, so he said, "No need. It's just some minor injuries." Xiao Ju frowned and looked at her coldly. "There's really no need." Hien tried to break free of his hand, but Xiao Ju was too strong and couldn't break free. The young man in the dark armor looked down at her. His posture was tall, and his cold eyes seemed to contain knives. However, his tone was light. "You don't know pain? You don't feel pain, so you don't know how to shout in pain?" Hien sensed that he seemed to be angry. She instinctively replied, "It doesn't hurt." A hint of disdain flashed through the young man's eyes. He looked calmly at her and said, "Do you not feel pain, or do you not dare to feel pain? Do you think it's not necessary, or do you not need it?" After saying this, he released his hand and turned to leave. He didn't look back at Hien. What kind of temper is this? Hien stood in place, and after a while, he muttered in a low voice, "No one has taught me, and no one has coaxed me." She followed him. The war ended much earlier than expected. It took 2 days for the Yudo's ships to enter the canal, for the wind and fire to attack, and for the remaining soldiers to be cleaned up. It didn't even take 3 days. Of course, The bravery of Jiang City soldiers and the ingenuity of Xiao Ju's command and formation played a part in this. However, the most important factor was the east wind. If the wind had blown a little later or a little shorter, the result wouldn't have been like this. The fire from the east wind didn't stop and buried thousands of Yudo's ships in the canal outside Jiang City. Countless citizens of Jiang City knelt down and kowtowed in the direction of the canal. Tears flowed down their faces. Thank you, Water Goddess, for your protection. Thank you, General Fengyun, for commanding the troops like a god. Thank you, God, for protecting Jiang. God, for protecting Dawei. The morning glow dyed the surface of the river and dyed the blood-soaked river a golden red. It was unknown whether it was the blood of the martyrs or the morning glow. It was so magnificent that it was shocking. The remaining Jiang City soldiers on the shore took off their armor and sat on the ground. They stared blankly in the direction of the sunrise. Their blood-stained faces were filled with relief. Jiang City was defended. In the Chui residence, He Yan sat on the couch and watched Lin Shuanghe brew medicine for her. Brother Lin, leave this to Chui Jiao, He Yan said. There's no need to trouble you. Lin Shuanghe sat by the stove and fanned himself. What does this little girl know? My medicine can't be brewed by ordinary people. I have to do it myself. I say, little sister He, you too. Don't you know that there's such a big wound on your body? No wonder why Jean is so angry. If you die here, people will blame themselves. It's not a big wound. He Yan felt that this person was exaggerating. It's only the length of a palm. It didn't hurt any vital parts. In a real battle, this was considered a minor injury. There was once when she was hit by an arrow in her shoulder. She had to continue fighting, but the doctors around her couldn't take care of her. She could only pull out the arrow with her bare hands and continue fighting with the arrow embedded in her skin. Later, when the military doctor came to see her, He Yan's entire sleeve was dyed red with blood. The wound was stuck to the cloth and could not be pulled apart. As long as she could still walk and fight, it was considered a minor injury as long as it did not harm her life. Little sister, when will you remember that you're a girl? When I was treating other young ladies in Shuo capital, they would sometimes kill themselves just because of a birthmark the size of a fingernail. If you send this wound over, people will be able to see it. He lifted the lid of the medicine pot to take a look. The medicine was boiling in the pot and bubbling. Lin Shuanghe put the lid down again. He held the pot with a handkerchief and placed it on the table beside him. Let's not talk about whether your life is in danger or whether you can endure pain. But don't you like to be beautiful? He took a clean medicine bowl from the side and poured the medicine in the pot into it. Aren't you afraid that your future husband will dislike you? Don't blame me for saying this, but it's normal for a girl to pay attention to this. He Yan leaned against the couch and looked at his actions. She smiled and said, I don't plan on getting married. But Lin Shuanghe paused and looked at her. You're young and not bad. Your personality can be considered straightforward and cute. Since you don't have any difficult illnesses, why don't you plan on getting married? Getting married is boring. He Yan sighed. It's just a house. Walking around in the same place, it's just the same place. It's better to live in the military camp. Your way of thinking is quite strange. Lin Shuanghe put the medicine aside to dry. When you meet someone you like in the future, you won't think this way. Even if I meet someone I like, I still won't get married, He Yan said. Lin Shuanghe narrowed his eyes. Younger sister He, don't tell me you already have someone you like? No. Although she answered straightforwardly, Lin Shuanghe suddenly felt suspicious. He Yan was perfectly fine, so why would she say such depressing words? Based on his many years of experience with women, for a girl to say something like, I don't want to get married, at such a young age, it was most likely that she had been hurt by love. He Yan had always been in the Liang province guards, practicing with swords and rods all day long. Where did this hurt from love come from? His heart trembled. Could it be that she had really fallen in love with Chu Xilan? And because of Chu Xilan's identity and his relationship with Su Pingting, she knew that she couldn't marry Chu Xilan. Was that why her heart was like dead ashes? But if that was the case, what about Xiao Ju? For a moment, Lin Shuanghe felt that all kinds of situations were very serious. Seeing him in a daze, He Yan asked again, "Brother Lin, have you seen my master?" From the beginning of the war to the end of the war, when everyone began to clean up the mess, He Yan didn't see Lu Buwang. Lin Shuanghe said, "That morning, Master Lu left with Cui Zhongqi. Cui Zhongqi was busy taking care of the wounded soldiers and hadn't come back yet. Master Lu should be with him." He Yan nodded, but he felt a little uneasy. Lin Shuanghe walked to He Yan again, took out a round box from his sleeve, and put it beside He Yan's pillow. "This is our family's secret scar removal ointment. Use it on your body. I don't dare to say that you'll recover completely, but it's still possible to recover most of your scars." He Yan's body had already been bandaged by a female doctor in Jiang City. At this moment he picked it up and looked at it. He saw that the words, "scar removal and muscle growth," were written on the round box, which looked particularly familiar. Thinking back carefully, he remembered that when he went to Liangzhou City with Xiao Ju, he was injured in a fight with Ding Yi at night. Later, when he returned to the Liangzhou City guards, Shenmu Xue also put such a box on the medicine tray when he brought her medicine. At that time, He Yan used it, and it really had an excellent scar removal effect. His scars were now very light. At that time, she was very grateful to Shenmu Xue for being so careful and praised the magic of the ointment. Unfortunately, the box was very small, and there wasn't much medicine, so it was gone after she used it. "Is this your family's secret ointment?" He Yan asked. Lin Shuanghe was a little proud. "To be precise, it's my secret ointment." "Is it very expensive?" "Little sister how can you use money to measure the value of medicine? I'm not selling this medicine. If I really did sell it, the people in Shuajing City would be able to live comfortably for several lifetimes with this medicine. Money is like floating clouds to me. I specially made this medicine for Huaijin. He gets injured easily every day, and when Xiao Ruby sees him later, her heart will ache. If I add some scar removal ointment, Xiao Ruby won't be able to tell, and she'll feel better. So that her big brother won't worry?" He Yan thought to himself, Xiao Ju is quite cautious. But she clearly remembered that Shenmu Xue was the one who gave it to her. He Yan asked Lin Shuanghe, "Have you never made this medicine for other people? Like other girls?" "What do you mean?" Lin Shuanghe said curiously, "If this medicine really gets out, not only me, but even my father and grandfather will be annoyed to death. I won't tell anyone else. I only made it for Huaijin. I didn't make much, only a few boxes. I only gave you one box because you and I are close. Don't tell anyone else. This medicine is hard to make, and I still want to live for a few more years." He Yan. "Then take your time to drink the medicine. Rest after you've finished." Lin Shuanghe waved his fan in satisfaction. "I'll go out and ask if there's anything else I can help with." Lin Shuanghe left, and He Yan looked at the medicine box in her hand. The medicine box was exquisite, and she held it in her palm. Xiao Ju gave it to her? The wounded soldiers were all settled down, and the dead soldiers were all recorded in a book. There weren't many soldiers in Jiang City to begin with, and after this battle, there weren't many left. Cui Yuezhi led the soldiers behind him to clean up the battlefield. He also had many injuries on his body. His face was covered in blood, and there was a wound on his head that was wrapped up with a white cloth. When he saw Xiao Ju coming from afar, Cui Yuezhi hurriedly went to greet him. Military Governor Xiao. Xiao Ju was much younger than him, but he didn't dare to underestimate him anymore. If not for Xiao Ju, Jiang City would not have been able to defend itself against the 150,000 Yuchuo soldiers. Luck played a part in their narrow victory, but more importantly, it was because of this lucky general. In He Yan's words, he was a famous general. He didn't lose when he shouldn't have, and he could win when he couldn't. No matter how bad the chess game was, he could turn defeat into victory. Of course, Missy was also very powerful. However, he heard that she was injured and was sent back to her residence to rest. "The battlefield has already been cleaned up," Cui Yuezhi said. "Once the Yuchuo soldiers have finished counting their casualties, we can return to the prince's residence and report the situation to His Highness. His Highness will write a report about this battle and report it to the imperial court. None of the people in Jiang City dare to forget the life-saving grace of the commander-in-chief. Xiao Ju walked forward. No need to thank them. Thank them. Cui Yuezhi was a little emotional. Probably because they had fought side by side before, he also felt a bit of genuine affection for Xiao Ju. Just as he was about to speak, someone suddenly came over. It was Cui Yuezhi's subordinate. Cui Yuezhi's subordinate glanced at Xiao Ju with a hesitant expression. What's the matter? Cui Yuezhi asked. Sir, we found Mr. Lu. Lu Buang hadn't been with them since the start of the battle. Cui Yuezhi was worried. Hearing this, he asked anxiously, Where is he? On the forest bank in front of the mouth of the calabash. The subordinate said, Mr. Lu. Cui Yuezhi's heart gradually sank. He looked at Xiao Ju. Xiao Ju lowered his eyes. After a while, he said calmly, Lead the way. Lu Buwang died in the center of the tactical deployment. He died very miserably. His body was covered with wounds. The most fatal wound was a knife wound on his chest, which ran through his heart from the back to the front. Before he died, the corners of his mouth were still curled up, without any resentment. He was very calm, as if he had seen something very beautiful. In addition, there were many Yuto who had died under his sword around him. There were also corpses in the depths of the dense forest. Cui Yuezhi looked at them for a long time and asked hesitantly, Is it Chimin Dunjia? Xiao Ju said, Yes. Cui Yuezhi was in awe. Nowadays, there were not many people who knew Chimin Dunjia. Lu Buwang set up the tactical deployment here and killed many Yudo, which bought them a lot of time. If it weren't for Lu Buwang, those Yudo would have entered the city and started a killing spree. The consequences would have been unimaginable. Lu Buwang didn't tell anyone that he had been blocking in front for so long that no one knew that he had died. His sword fell beside him, his zither was smashed into pieces, and his white clothes were stained with blood. Cui Yuezhi looked at Xiao Ju worriedly. He only knew that Lu Buwang was Xiao Ju's master. Now that Lu Buwang was dead, Xiao Ju must be very sad. Xiao Ju squatted down and slowly tidied up Lu Buwang's clothes, which had been messed up by the Yudo. Then she took out a handkerchief from her arms and wiped the blood off his face. After doing all this, she looked at Lu Buwang's face and said in a low voice, Take him back. He Yen stayed in the Cui mansion until the evening. Cui Yuezhi's 4 concubines took turns to visit her and brought her all kinds of food. Even though He Yen liked sweets, she couldn't eat so many sweets. After she finally sent the concubines away, someone came to report, Master is back. The commander-in-chief is back. He Yen was refreshed. She got out of bed, put on her shoes and walked out. Cui Yuezhi and Xiao Ju were back. Maybe Lu Buwang was back too. As soon as Cui Yuezhi walked to the door, she was surrounded by the 4 concubines, especially the 3rd concubine. She hugged Cui Yuezhi and cried her heart out. She was really good at crying. He Yen was thinking in his heart when he saw a person walking past Cui Yuezhi and coming towards him. It was Xiao Ju. She hadn't had time to take off her armor and was travel-worn. He Yen didn't feel disgusted. He thought in his heart, sure enough, a person with extraordinary appearance can't hide her beauty even if she is covered in dust. Xiao Ju walked up to her and frowned slightly. Who let you come out? It's not a big deal. He Yen clapped her hands. Even Brother Lin thinks that you are making a fuss over a minor issue. By the way, Commander-in-Chief, have you seen my master? I asked around, but no one has seen him. At this time, he should be back. Hearing this, Xiao Ju's eyes moved and fell on her face. A trace of pity flashed through those cold black eyes. It was like a silent sigh that fell on people's hearts. He Yan's smile slowly disappeared. She asked, Is something wrong? Xiao Ju said, Go and see him. He Yan's entire body froze. Lu Buwang was sleeping on the couch in the room. His clothes had been changed. Except for his pale face, he looked like he was asleep. It was as if as long as she called him, he would sit up, look at her with a smile, and call her, He Yan's eyes suddenly turned red. She almost couldn't stand steadily. She walked to Lu Buwang's side and held his hand. His hand was very cold, not as warm as when he pulled her up from the pile of corpses. He used to be a light sleeper and would wake up as long as there was a slight movement. Now she called him master here, but he was unmoved. He Yan's hand touched his shoulder. After a pause, she gently pulled down Lu Buwang's clothes. His clothes had been changed, so it was obvious that he was injured. But He Yan didn't expect that there would be so many wounds. Those Yudo suffered a big loss in Lu Buwang's hands, so they naturally wanted to pay him back 100 times. When Lu Buwang's physical strength was exhausted, he rushed to make another cut on the spoils of war. His body was broken into pieces. However, his expression was so calm, as if he had just fallen asleep under the flower tree and had a beautiful dream. He Yan's gaze fell on Lu Buwang's hand, which was clenched into a fist very tightly. He Yan was silent for a moment. Then she used a little strength to pry open his fingers and saw what he was hiding in his palm. It was a silver bracelet. It looked very rough and seemed to be an old thing from many years ago. It was probably played with and treasured every day. Some carvings had been smoothed out and were not very obvious. But she could still see a small wild daisy carved on the edge of the bracelet. This was what Lu Buwang wanted to protect at the end of his life. He had no children and only took her as his disciple. At the end of his life, except for a zither, a sword, and this silver bracelet, he left nothing. Empty and vast, clean and tidy. He Yan's throat was choked with sobs and she couldn't speak. They had reunited after a long time, but they were going to be separated forever before they could say a few words. She desperately held back her tears, and a handkerchief was placed in front of her. "If you want to cry, just cry." Xiaoju said, "I'll be outside. No one will come in." His voice was very soft and light, with a little imperceptible comfort. Before He Yan could speak, he turned and went out. The door was closed behind him. A girl's cry came from behind the door. At first, it was a suppressed sob. Then, as if she couldn't suppress it, the cry became louder and louder. In the end, she wailed like a child who couldn't get candy. The crying reached the ears of Concubine Wei in the next room. She stood up and twisted her handkerchief uneasily. "Should I go and take a look?" "Don't." Second concubine shook her head and looked out of the window. The young man stood in front of the door with his hands behind his back, like a guardian guarding the fragile precious thing. "You and I can't comfort her at such a sad time. Let them solve it themselves." The wailing in the room stopped at some point. After a long time, the door opened with a creak, and someone walked out from inside. Xiaoju looked sideways. The girl's tears had been wiped clean. Except for her red eyes, there was nothing wrong with her. Her expression was calm and even a little deliberately relaxed. "Commander-in-Chief, thank you for guarding the door for me," she said. Xiaoju frowned and looked at her. He Yan looked back. "Why are you looking at me? Is there something on my face?" "It's ugly." "What?" "You look ugly when you lie." His black eyes were glittering, and his words were as cold as ice. With a kind of insight, he said in a deep voice, "I've said it before. You can cry when you want to cry, and you can smile when you don't want to. It's better than your pretentious look now. It's extremely ugly." His words were really not pleasant to hear. He Yan was stunned for a moment, and then she smiled. She said, "I'm not pretending. It's just, that's all I can do." Lu Buwang was dead. This was a fact that couldn't be changed. She could be sad for Lu Buwang's death, but she had to look forward. People couldn't tell everyone their pain and sadness. This would only make people hate them. Some painful things should be kept in the heart. If she always cried to others, over time, others would hate her, and she wouldn't be able to get over it. She used the experience of 2 lifetimes to tell herself that no matter how difficult things were, they would pass. But, do you know? She sighed. There are not many people in this world who are good to me. I can count them with one hand. Now there is one less. She only asked, "Who killed you?" "I don't know." Chai Anchi said blankly, "As early as 20 days ago, when I was in Tsuewei Pavilion, someone wanted to kill me. They set a big fire at night, but I escaped. The wound on my face was left at that time. After that, I hid until Yudo came to Jiang. I heard about second young master's news and wanted to find you, but I was chased halfway. He was no longer the strong man under Xiao Zhongwu. After so many years, his age and skills could not be compared to back then. Because of that big fire, he was easily ambushed and killed because of his old injuries. He was still alive. If he could live to see Xiao Ju, he could see how the young man looked like when he grew up, and he could tell her the guilt and regret in his heart. I don't have anything to help you with, second young master. I'm just saying this for peace of mind. I owe the general, madam, first young master, second young master, and my brothers. I can't repay them all in this lifetime. He seemed to be crying and laughing at the same time. When I go to hell, I will personally kowtow to the general and apologize. His voice stopped abruptly. His eyes were still open, but there was no light in them anymore. He was dead. Xiao Ju sat quietly with her eyes lowered. After a while, she stood up and walked out of the room. Chai Anshi was dead. The last person who knew about the Battle of Mingshui was gone. He could not bring a dead person back to Shuojing as a witness, and Chai Anshi did not leave behind anything that could be used as evidence. Coming here was just to confirm some of the things that he had guessed from the beginning. Mu Hongjin and Lin Shuanghe were waiting for him outside. When they saw Xiao Ju come out, Mu Hongjin said, "When Yudo came, the situation was complicated. I could not send people to find him. After the incident, someone found Chai Anshi's whereabouts. When my men found him, he was being chased. When he was rescued, he was already seriously injured. I asked the doctor in the city to stop the bleeding temporarily." Mu Hongjin looked at Xiao Ju's expression and frowned slightly. "Is he dead?" "Xiao Ju, he's dead." She sighed and did not say anything. After searching for so long, they finally found him, but he was dead. It was such a pity that he was so close. Lin Shuanghe asked, "Huaijin, what do you plan to do after this?" Xiao Ju was silent for a while, then said, "Chai Anshi is dead. The war in Jiang is over. We will leave for Liangzhou in a few days." "Are you leaving?" Mu Hongjin was a little reluctant. "You didn't stay here for long. Why don't you wait for Xiao Lu to come back?" Xiao Ju said, "I have other things to do." Mu Hongjin did not ask him to stay. She smiled and said, "No matter what, Jiang City was saved because of military governor Xiao. I will write a memorial to the emperor. His Majesty will definitely reward you." "No need." Xiao Ju turned and walked away. He seemed to be uninterested in these things and was a little impatient. Lin Shuanghe scratched his head and explained, "Huaijin is in a bad mood now. Your Highness, please don't lower yourself to his level." Mu Hongjin shook her head. Since he was the hero of Jiang City, she was grateful no matter what. "Oh right." Xiao Ju seemed to have thought of something and stopped walking. He did not turn around and said in a low voice, "Your Highness, do you know that Mr. Lu is no longer here?" Mu Hongjin's expression froze. In the Chui residence, Chu Zhao was boiling tea in a small stove. His expression was calm and his movements were patient. Ying Xiang handed him a handkerchief. He held the teapot by the handle and placed it on the table. "Chai Anshi is probably not going to make it," Ying Xiang said softly. "Chai Anshi can be considered a talent to be able to find a place like Jiang and only die after 5 years. Chu Zhao smiled. "But fourth young master," Ying Xiang did not understand, "why didn't you just kill him? Why did you deliberately keep him alive and let him see military governor Xiao and tell him the truth? Wouldn't that expose the prime minister?" Even if he didn't say it, Xiao Huaijin would have already guessed who the mastermind was. Chu Zhao smiled carelessly, telling him the truth would only make him feel more at ease. Chai Anshi was defeated in front of him, so he would hate the prime minister even more. The greater the threat Xiao Huaijin poses to the prime minister, the more the prime minister will value me. After all, no one knows better than the prime minister about checks and balances. Besides, this is Jiang. Since there is no one around, what we do is our own business. He said calmly, "Whether we add fuel to the fire or reduce it, it's all up to us." Ying Xiang nodded. "This servant understands." "Then, fourth young master, now that Chai Anshi is dead and we have done what the prime minister asked us to do, are we going back to the Shuo capital?" "No," Chu Zhao said, There is one thing that I am very curious about, so I have decided to go to the Liangzhou Guard first. The Liangzhou Guard? Ying Xiang was surprised. That is military governor Zhao's territory. Chu Zhao and Xiao Ju had never been on good terms. In the Liangzhou Guard, Chu Zhao would definitely not be able to gain any advantage. So, it will be very interesting to snatch someone from Xiao Huijin's territory. The tea leaves in the teacup floated up and down. As he looked at them, he slowly chuckled. The return time was set for 2 days later. After Lu Buwang was buried, He Yen, Xiao Ju, and the others set off to return to the Liangzhou Guard. Coming to Jiang this time, there were many happy things, but there were also many sad things. The most regretful thing was that they had to part forever after reuniting with an old friend. He Yen became unusually silent and slowly packed her luggage in the room. Commander-in-Chief, I just realized that you're a real expert at lying. Xiao Ju put down the military book in her hand and looked at her with raised eyebrows. I was just saying. Don't take it to heart. He Yen sighed. It's just that I've been in Jiang for too long. I'm a little reluctant to go back to the Liangzhou garrison. It was natural for the simple and honest people to feel sentimental when they came to such a gentle water town. She didn't know if she would have the chance to come here again in this lifetime. Even if she did, she didn't know how many years it would be. Do you want to stay? Xiao Ju asked. He Yen nodded, then shook her head. No. I like it here, but there are more important things to do. If she didn't have the grudges from her previous life and simply used the identity of He Yen, she would naturally be more than happy to be able to stay here for a long time. However, she still had grudges to settle. No matter how beautiful the scenery was, she couldn't stay here. She had to keep moving forward. Are you talking about making contributions? His voice carried a hint of mockery. He Yen smiled. You can say that. However, Commander-in-Chief, you promised me that as long as I follow you to Jiang City, you'll let me join the Southern Prefecture Army. You still keep your promise. Xiao Ju said, I keep my promise. He Yen was happy. At least she was a little closer to her goal. Xiao Ju lowered her eyes to hide the deep meaning in her eyes. When she raised her head again, her expression had returned to normal. Just as she was about to speak, someone knocked on the door. It was Cui Jiao's voice. Madam. Come in. Cui Jiao walked in with a neatly folded set of clothes in her hands. She first glanced at Xiao Ju with a troubled expression. What's wrong? He Yen asked. Fourth young Master Chu from next door asked me to return this set of clothes to you. He said that it was thanks to Madam's clothes that he was able to escape unscathed. He is very grateful. He Yen remembered that when Chu Zhao had returned Mu Hongjin's clothes for her, He Yen had given him the mermaid dress that was invulnerable to swords and spears and impervious to fire and water. He had asked him to wear it as armor. If he hadn't asked Cui Jiao to return it, He Yen would have forgotten about it. He Yen took the mermaid dress and thought for a moment before putting it on the table. She was also a girl when she returned to the Liangzhou Guards. She had no use for this dress. It would be better to leave it for Cui Yueji's concubines. As soon as he put it down, he met Xiao Ju's cold eyes. The young man tilted his head to look at her and calmly said, You gave the clothes I bought to Chu Xilin? You didn't buy it, He Yen said honestly. Didn't Brother Lin pay for it? Xiao Ju's expression was indifferent. He Yen realized that this person was angry. Thinking about it, he and Chu Xilin were sworn enemies. But what happened was what happened. Many things could not be changed by one's will. She was no longer an ignorant little girl. All she had to do was bury her head in the pillow and lie to herself that she didn't believe it. That was why she had come. Lu Buwang died in order to protect Jiang City. Before he died, he set up a formation on the riverbank in front of the mouth of the calabash. He fought against hundreds and thousands of people alone, but he didn't tell anyone. As usual, he refused to say anything. This was the only man she had ever loved in her life. Even though Lu Buwang had someone else in his heart and they had broken up for many years, a concern was still a concern. Mu Hongjin would still be sad if he died. Your Highness. He Yen thought for a while, walked forward, and spread out his palm. Do you recognize this? Mu Hongjin slowly turned her head and saw a silver bracelet lying in He Yan's hand. The bracelet was polished until it was smooth and warm, and a circle of tiny daisies could be faintly seen on the edge. In an instant, the images of the past filled her mind, and she seemed to hear the kind voice of an old woman falling into her ears. This is called a happy bracelet. Buy one and wear it on your sweetheart's hand. You won't be separated from her for the rest of your life. Young hero Lu, did you hear that? Quickly buy one for me. She's not my sweetheart. Mu Hongjin stared blankly at the bracelet in front of her, as if she was looking at a late gift. She only felt her throat tighten, and she asked in a hoarse voice, "Why do you have this?" Before Master died, he had been holding this bracelet tightly in his hand. I think this should be very important to him. He Yan looked at Mu Hongjin. Is this the bracelet of your highness? Mu Hongjin took the bracelet from He Yan's hand and murmured, I don't know. How could she know? Those jokes from back then had long fallen into the depths of her memory, and she didn't even dare to recall them. She had already confronted Lu Buwang that he didn't like her, but now this bracelet clearly told her that she had once been in Lu Buwang's heart? How could she believe it? How could she believe it? A wave of powerless sorrow also surfaced in He Yan's heart. Lu Buwang had already left, and no one knew what happened back then, but she still wanted to defend Lu Buwang. Your Highness, I always feel that there may have been many misunderstandings between you and Master back then, He Yan said. It's just that he's no longer here. If Your Highness recognizes this bracelet, Your Highness, please take care of it for me. If Your Highness feels embarrassed, please put it back into the wooden coffin. But I think, He Yan said softly, if Master is still here, he will want you to keep it. A gift that he didn't give, a belated explanation, and a frank confession were probably the most regretful things in his life. But what was the use of regretting? When a person died, all the grievances related to him, whether he was willing or not, had disappeared. The story ended here. Mu Hongjin looked at the silver bracelet in her palm. After a while, she slowly clenched her palm and whispered, I see. He Yan saw that she was going to put away the bracelet, and he was slightly relieved. There was really not much she could do for Lu Buwang, and now, this was the only thing she could do. The wooden coffin was closed, and all kinds of wild flowers were piled up around the boat. Lu Buwang had gone down the mountain in spring, and now he was going back to spring again. The clear river water pushed the boat forward, farther and farther, and gradually disappeared in the green waves between the mountains. What exactly is Permitha? He Yan murmured in a low voice. But who would know? Just like when Lu Buwang went down the mountain and met Mu Hongjin, he sneered at the words, a lifetime, that the woman selling flowers said. Back then, he only felt that his life was long, but it turned out that he had only met a few people, listened to a few songs, met a few times, and parted a few times. A lifetime passed quickly. After Lu Buwang's funeral, He Yan and the others were about to set off for the Liangzhou guards. Cui Yuezhi came to see them off. He stood at the door of the Cui mansion and instructed people to keep moving things into the carriage. These are all specialties of Jiang. Take more back. Liangzhou doesn't have these things. Lin Shuanghe supported his head with a fan and said, there's no need to bring the roasted rabbit. It's greasy and inconvenient in the carriage. Bring it, Cui Yuezhi insisted. Take it and eat it on the way. Zhong Fu, he called the butler over. Are the apricots ready? Zhong Fu came over with a cloth bag of red apricots. They've all been washed clean. Governor and Miss, if you're thirsty, eat 2 apricots. They're thirsty and delicious. He Yan, those who didn't know would think that they were going for an outing. It was really difficult to refuse such kindness. It's really enough, Lord Cui, He Yan said with a smile. If you pack more things, the governor and I won't have a place to sit. Cui Yuezhi looked at the full carriage and finally stopped. He smiled and said, all right, then forget it. You've stayed in my Cui mansion for too short a time. If you stay longer, I'll definitely take you around the entire Jiang city. At this point, he solemnly bowed to Xiao Ju and He Yan. It's all thanks to Military Governor Xiao, Miss He, and Master Lu that the disaster in Jiang City was resolved. I will never forget this great kindness. The people of Jiang will also remember your kindness. In this life, if there's anything that Jiang City, and I will go through water and tread on fire without hesitation. Miss He, if you have the chance in the future, you must come visit Jiang City more often. The person who spoke was Cui Yuezhi's fourth concubine. She smiled and said, next time, stay longer. We'll make delicious food for you. Second concubine looked at Xiao Ju and said with a smile, military governor Xiao as well. Concubine Wei glared at the two of them. She stepped forward and held He Yan's hand. She reminded him, be careful on the road. He Yan smiled and nodded. As they were talking, someone came in from outside. Lord Lieutenant Mu Yi has brought people over. He said that he wants to say goodbye to Miss He. Xiao Ju raised her eyebrows. He Yan asked, say goodbye to me? The people that Mu Yi brought were the 50 people who had planned to set fire to the Yuchuo soldiers' ships with He Yan. Among the 50 people, 20 or so had died in the war. However, at least half of them had survived. At this moment, the remaining 20 or so people heard that He Yan was leaving. They followed Mu Yi to thank He Yan. It's all thanks to Miss He. One of the young men scratched his head. Otherwise, we might not be alive right now. Before Miss He leaves, we decided to come together to thank Miss He. Mu Yi took out a wooden frame and handed it to He Yan. This is a gift from everyone to Miss He. He Yan took it and looked at it. It was a wooden drawing carved out of a whole piece of wood. It depicted a sea of fire. A young woman in armor stood at the bow of the ship. The woman held a long whip in her hand. Her long hair was tied up high behind her head. She looked valiant and formidable. It was very eye-catching. He Yan looked at it for a long time. He asked hesitantly, this is me? Another person said, we pooled some money together and found the best craftsman in Jiang City to carve it out. However, we still couldn't carve out Miss He's charm. When Miss He used her whip to sink the Wutong warship, it was so exciting. It was much better than the carving in this drawing. That's right. This drawing can also carve out Miss He's appearance. It's not as beautiful as Miss He herself. That's right. Miss He is so beautiful that even the gods can't draw her. At the end of the speech, all of them were serious praises, which made He Yan blush. Well, she could feel the enthusiasm of the men in Jiang City. Cui Yuezhi looked in front of him with a smile. Mu Yi looked at He Yan and said, does Miss He have to go back to Liangzhou? He Yan was stunned for a moment. He nodded and answered, I still have important matters to attend to. I see. A trace of regret flashed through the young man's eyes. However, after a moment he stared into He Yan's eyes and asked seriously, then will you come back to Jiang City in the future? Mu Yi was handsome and masculine. When his sincere and slightly shy gaze landed on someone, it was really irresistible. Even though He Yan was slow to realize it, when faced with such a gaze, she understood a little. She was a little embarrassed but also very touched. No one could remain indifferent when faced with sincere feelings. It was a very honorable thing to be liked and admired by others. I like Jiang City very much. She smiled and looked at Mu. If there's a chance in the future, I'll definitely come back. Mu Yi was stunned. He scratched his head and smiled foolishly. Oh! Lin Shuanghe waved his fan and leaned close to Xiao Ju's ear. He said, I already said that my little sister He's appearance and temperament will definitely be liked. Look, so many people are eyeing her covetously. You have to keep an eye on my little sister He. Xiao Ju sneered, as if she was incredulous. What kind of taste is that? Of course it's good taste. Lin Shuanghe put away his fan. You have to know that gold will always shine. While the two were talking, another person walked out of the fu. This person was dressed in a sky-blue robe. He was thin and gentle. It was Chu Zhao. Beside Chu Zhao, Ying Xiang was carrying a bundle in his hand. Fourth young Master Chu? Cui Yuezhi was stunned. Cui Yuezhi had already learned about the relationship between Chu Zhao and Xiao Ju from Mu Hongjin. The two of them were not on good terms and had different standpoints. Mu Hongjin had arranged for them to be in the same place to keep them in check. Speaking of which, They were able to defeat Yudo this time because of the defense map and information that Chu Zhao had sent over. However, Cui Yuezhi was a martial arts practitioner. He already felt some sympathy for Xiao Ju. Later on, he had also fought alongside Xiao Ju. The scales in his heart had already tilted towards Xiao Ju. Hence, he treated Chu Zhao with politeness and unfamiliarity. "Fourth young Master Chu, where are you going?" Cui Yuezhi asked. "I came to Jiang this time because of the Yudo incident. Since this matter is over, it's time to bid farewell to everyone." He smiled slightly. "I didn't tell Master Cui before because I didn't want to trouble Master Cui. These few days, the battlefield near the canal has been cleaned up, so Master Cui must be busy. He makes it sound like he's very understanding and we're putting on airs." Lin Shuanghe leaned closer to Xiao Ju and whispered, "He's too good with words." Cui Yuezhi smiled. "Fourth young Master Chu, you're too polite. You should have told me in advance. No matter how busy I am, I still have time to bid you farewell." Cui Yuezhi looked at Xiao Ju. "Fourth young Master Chu, if you depart today, won't you be able to travel together with Military Governor Xiao? This way, you won't be too lonely." When Xiao Ju heard this, her expression was cold. She didn't even pretend to be happy. He Yan thought that Cui Yuezhi's politeness was a little stiff. Chu Zhao probably chose today on purpose so that they could depart together. However, she didn't expect Chu Zhao to hear this and smile. "Yes, our destination is also the Liang Province Guard." "Liang Province Guard?" He Yan was surprised. "Fourth young Master Chu, why are you going to the Liang Province Guard?" Xiao Ju raised her eyes and looked at him. "I've already written a letter to inform Prime Minister Su of the military situation in Jiang." Chu Zhao smiled. "Before His Majesty's decree is issued, I will remain in the Liang Province Guard. After all, I was present from the beginning to the end of the matter in Jiang." He didn't continue speaking, but everyone understood what he meant. Cui Yuezhi was secretly speechless. The open and covert struggles in the imperial court had already become so intense. No wonder the Yudo had an opportunity to take advantage of them. When Xiao Ju heard this, she was first surprised. Then she said with a faint smile, "Fourth young Master Chu, you can stay in the Liang Province Guard if you want. However, I have the final say in the Liang Province Guard." Chu Zhao responded with a smile. He didn't pay any more attention to Chu Zhao and turned to board the carriage. He Yan looked at Chu Zhao with a different gaze. This person seemed to be doing it on purpose. He was doing it on purpose to the point where he didn't even bother to hide it. She bowed to Chu Zhao and said, "Then, Brother Chu, I'll board the carriage first." Without waiting for Chu Zhao to speak, He Yan hurriedly boarded the carriage. Chu Zhao's provocation definitely made second young master Xiao unhappy. At this juncture, he couldn't pull the hair off a tiger's head. If he angered Xiao Ju and she wasn't allowed to enter the southern prefecture army, this trip would be in vain. Chu Zhao saw her hurriedly boarding the carriage. Chu Zhao was stunned for a moment before he shook his head and smiled. He bid farewell to Cui Yuezhi and the others one by one before he calmly boarded his own carriage with Ying Xiang. The carriage drove out of the city. Lin Shuanghe lifted the curtain of the carriage and looked out the window. Jiang City had just experienced the Yudo military incident, so it wasn't as lively as before. However, the rivers of various sizes were the same as before, and the boats floated quietly. It wouldn't be long before the city returned to its former lively state. When they came, they just treated it as playing around. Now that they were about to leave, they actually felt a lot of sadness. Lin Shuanghe sighed as he looked at it. He Yan was still tightly hugging the wooden carving that Mu Yi and the others had given her. She traced the carving with her fingers. The woman in the drawing actually had some of the charm of a female general from her previous life. Xiao Ju saw her actions and mocked. "Now you're not afraid of bringing it back and letting the other Liang province guards see it?" Previously, she had been extremely troubled by the masked man. Now, with such a large wooden carving, she felt as if she had received a treasure. She no longer mentioned things like, "It's over if someone finds out my identity as a woman." A woman's thoughts really couldn't be taken seriously. If it really doesn't work, I can say that it's for my fiancé. Isn't this what you taught me, Governor? He Yen said, there are so many people and so many good intentions. It's hard to refuse such great kindness. She spoke modestly, but her eyes revealed a sense of satisfaction and contentment. Xiao Ju only felt that it was funny. She leaned back slightly and a trace of a smile flashed through her eyes. She said indifferently, it's quite popular. The horse carriage gradually disappeared into the distance. Mu Hongjin stood on the shore. Among the mountains, she could no longer see the boat of carrying souls. The former youth had returned to the mountains, lakes, and seas. She still had to continue sitting here, on the high seat in the cold palace hall. This was her responsibility. The young highness is already on the way back, the maid beside her said softly. Your highness, let's go back to the residence. Mu Hongjin nodded. She took one last look at the end of the long river and turned around. She wore a wide-sleeved robe, dignified and beautiful. There seemed to be a dot of silver light on her wrist that quickly disappeared. A wanderer came out of nowhere. He wore a bamboo hat and held a bamboo stick. He walked along the river bank and sang. His voice drifted with the wind and gradually faded into the distance. The returnee still thinks of the imperial court. How can I comfort myself today? The bitter cold thinks of your thin clothes, riding a thin horse under the waning moon. I also know that there must be differences in life, but I'm afraid that time will drift away. The cold lantern opposite to the past, when will the night rain sound bleak? The end of the 4th volume. Chapter 162. On the way back to Liangzhou from Jiang, they were not as energetic as when they first arrived. It was probably because they had just gone through a fierce battle, so everyone was a little tired. Lin Shuanghe also returned Cui Jiao and Hong Qiao's indenture contracts to them. He also left a sum of money for their parents to tell them not to sell their children in the future. Before leaving, he even mentioned Cui Yuezhi's name because he was afraid that their parents would secretly oppose him. The two girls were reluctant to leave. After all, it was not every day that they could meet a master who was easy to serve and did not beat or scold the servants. Sometimes, being the servant of such a kind-hearted madam was much easier than struggling in the difficult world. When they left the Liangzhou guard, it was not yet spring. Now that they had been delayed on the road, it was already early summer by the time they returned. He Yen had already changed back into men's clothes. It was more convenient to wear men's clothes when they were hurrying on the road. Lin Shuanghe would occasionally wave his fan and sigh, my younger sister he is so beautiful, but she has to dress up as a man. What a waste. He Yen treated it as if he was talking nonsense. On the 2nd day of the 5th month, Xiao Ju and He Yen arrived at the Liangzhou guard. At the foot of Baiyue Mountain, the sound of soldiers training could be heard from afar. He Yen jumped off the carriage and looked in the direction of Wulu River and the martial arts practice field. He suddenly felt a sense of familiarity. In the end, she had been in the Liangzhou guard for at most a year, but she seemed to have completely gotten used to life here. As soon as she arrived, she was like a tired bird returning to the forest. She felt indescribably at ease. Shen Han, who had already received the news, rushed over and helped everyone unload the goods from the carriage. When he saw that He Yen and Xiao Ju were safe and sound, he immediately sighed in relief. A long time had passed by the time they received news about the military situation in Jiang. They also knew that it was 20,000 Jiang city soldiers against 150,000 Yudo. Just thinking about it made them feel scared. They were only worried about whether they were injured in the fierce battle. Now, it seemed that they were all alive and kicking, so there was no need to worry. Commander-in-Chief must be tired from the journey. Go back to your room and rest for a while. Shen Han said, the room has already been cleaned. Xiao Ju nodded. While they were talking, another carriage arrived and stopped behind them. The curtain of the carriage was lifted and Ying Xiang helped Chu Zhao out of the carriage. Shen Han was stunned. This, 4th young Master Chu will stay in the Liang Province Guards for the time being. Xiao Ju's voice was calm. Find him a room. He then glanced sideways at Chu Zhao and said in a mocking tone, the conditions in the Institute of Wei are difficult. 4th young Master Chu, Please forgive us. Chu Zhao cupped his hands and thanked her. I don't dare. Xylan is very grateful. Xiao Ju couldn't be bothered with him. She turned around and left. He Yen hurried to catch up. Cheng Lisu was no longer in the Liang province guard. Logically speaking, Cheng Lisu's room should be returned to its rightful owner. However, Xiao Ju seemed to have forgotten about this matter. Living here, it was indeed more convenient for her to bathe and freshen up compared to living with the others. Since Xiao Ju didn't mention it, He Yen pretended not to know. He carried the luggage back to Cheng Lisu's room, which was next door to Xiao Ju's room. Shen Han followed behind him. He held a military booklet in his hand and said, "This is the content of the daily training for the past few days. I have already organized it. You can take a look at it slowly after you have rested. When you return, the Nan Province Guards will still be trained by you." In the past few months, the Liang Province Guards formation has begun to show results. Xiao Ju took the military booklet from his hand and flipped through it casually. Shen Han turned his head to look at the room next door. He saw He Yen sitting on the bed with a bag spread out in front of him. He seemed to be organizing the things he brought back from Jiang. With a rough look, there were quite a lot of things. Food, clothes, and small trinkets spread out on the bed. He looked at Xiao Ju again. She didn't seem to have any intention of stopping him. Shen Han fell into deep thought. It should be known that second young Master Xiao was very particular about cleanliness. Even after he left, the room had to be cleaned every day. The men in the army were fine. However, the instructors who interacted with Xiao Ju didn't dare to act rashly in front of Xiao Ju. At least they had the proper manners to sit and stand. They weren't as casual as He Yen. Xiao Ju didn't stop him either. Could it be that their relationship had improved after their trip to Jiang? He was deep in thought and didn't notice Xiao Ju calling his name. Xiao Ju saw that he didn't respond. She looked up and followed his gaze. She saw Shen Han staring at He Yen, who was sitting on the bed and organizing his luggage. She frowned and called out to him again, "Shen Han." Shen Han shuddered and came back to his senses. He said, "Commander-in-Chief, I'm going to write a memorial. Find a few people to keep an eye on Chu Xylan." He said, "If there's anything unusual, immediately inform me." Shen Han nodded and left. He Yen waited for Shen Han to leave before he lay down on the bed and rolled around. Xiao Ju frowned unhappily. "Are you a dog? After such a long journey, I've been tossing and turning in the carriage every day. Finally, I can have a good night's sleep." He Yen grabbed a handful of dried fruits from the bag and placed it in his palm. "Commander-in-Chief, this was given to me by Lady Chui's concubine. Do you want a handful?" Xiao Ju said, "No. It's a token of my sincerity. You don't have to be so heartless." He Yen found a clean handkerchief and wrapped the dried fruits. "I'll put it on your table later." Xiao Ju didn't even turn her head as she flipped through the military register that Shen Han had just sent over. He Yen thought that being a general had its difficulties, but being a soldier also had its advantages. For example, right now, she could roll around on the bed, but Xiao Ju still had to deal with a backlog of official matters. He Yen looked at Xiao Ju's back and suddenly thought of something. He asked Xiao Ju, "Commander-in-Chief, there's something I've always wanted to ask you." Xiao Ju said, "Go ahead." He Yen hesitated for a moment. "Do you still remember when we were in Jiang City, the day the Yudo attacked the city? I set the fire with you. We should have swum all the way to the shore, but I choked on water. Were you the one who dragged me up?" Actually, there was something she didn't say out loud. In her daze, she felt as though someone had passed her some air. She couldn't open her eyes underwater, but she vaguely felt that it was Xiao Ju. However, it was too unbelievable to say it out loud. Firstly, was Xiao Ju the kind of person who would pass someone's air like that? Definitely not. Secondly, she actually had such a dream. If she told others about it, they would laugh at her for thinking about such strange things in a life and death situation. Xiao Ju's eyes flickered. She paused and said, "Yes." Although it was hard to say, He Yen still bravely asked, "Commander-in-Chief, other than dragging me up the shore, did you do anything else?" Xiao Ju said, "No." He Yen was stunned. He tilted his head and slowly curled the corners of his lips. He said with a half-smile, "Then what do you want me to do to you?" Hien didn't know how to respond. She laughed and said, "No, I was just asking casually." She thought to herself that she really did have a wet dream. Fortunately, she didn't say it out loud. Otherwise, it would be too embarrassing. Xiao Ju looked at the military book in front of her again. However, her eyes flickered slightly. She glanced at the girl who was sitting on the bed and arranging her luggage. After a while, she looked away uncomfortably. In the end, she didn't say anything else. After arranging her luggage in the room, Hien looked at the sky. He guessed that the training in the martial arts arena was about to end. Hien went out and walked towards the arena. From tomorrow onwards, she would resume her daily training. However, today, she could chat with her brothers who she hadn't seen in a long time. Just as she arrived at the entrance of the arena, the training ended. From afar, she heard Xiao Mai's voice. "It's a Higu." A Higu is back. With a hula sound, all the people immediately surrounded him. Regardless of whether they knew her or not, Hien was now famous in the Liang province guard. Xiao Mai was pushed to the side. Hien pulled her to stand next to him. Xiao Mai said, "A Higu, when did you come back? Why didn't you tell us? I heard from the instructors that you and the governor won another battle in Jiang. A Higu, you're so amazing. How did the news spread so quickly?" Hien was still puzzled. Someone else said, "I heard that the Jiang city guard only had 20,000 people, while the Yuchuo soldiers had 150,000. Brother He, tell us, how exactly did you win?" "That's right, quickly tell the brothers." Hien felt that every time she did something and returned to the Liang province guard, she would become a storyteller, telling stories to everyone. However, she was surrounded in the center and couldn't advance or retreat. She could only sit on the railing of the arena and stretch out her hand. "Everyone quiet down, quiet down. This is a long story. Let me drink some water first." Someone immediately handed her water from a leather flask. "I have some. Drink mine. Do you want to eat something else? Do you want dry biscuits?" "Okay, then I'll say it." Actually, this battle wasn't very difficult. It was all because of the governor's good command. Jiang is water city. Liang Ping looked at Hien, who was surrounded by people from afar. He was speechless for a moment, then said, "This brat is so famous in the Liang province guard now? Why is it that he has hundreds of people responding to his call?" Ma Damei smiled mysteriously. "This is a good thing." "What's so good about it?" Hien went to Jiang with the governor. Ma Damei stroked her beard. When they came back, they rode in the same carriage. It can be seen that they got along quite well. Since he went to Jiang with the governor, that means he fought side by side. Do you think the governor will mention him when he goes to present a memorial to the governor this time? At least he has a small share of the credit. This young man is very skilled and has a magnanimous personality. As long as he follows the governor, it's inevitable that he will be promoted. I believe that his future will definitely not be restricted to our Liang province guards. Brother, it's not a bad thing for the Liang province guard to have a good relationship with him. Ma Damei chuckled and patted his shoulder. You have to look at the long term. He's only in his teens. Liang Ping muttered, how can you make it sound so powerful? Ma Damei smiled but didn't say anything. On the other side, the people who were listening to Hien's storytelling exclaimed in surprise. It's actually a fire attack. This is too dangerous. What if there's no wind? Won't we just sit there and wait for death? Hien laughed. If there's no wind, then we'll have to fight to the end. However, war is complicated to begin with. There's no absolute way for the strong to defeat the weak. As long as the timing is right, it's not difficult for the few to defeat the many. Therefore, we can't be certain of victory or defeat in every battle. On the battlefield, there are thousands of changes in an instant. Until the last moment, victory or defeat is unknown. Everyone nodded as if they understood. After listening to the commotion, the crowd gradually dispersed. The remaining people were naturally Hong Shan and the others. Wang Ba crossed her arms and looked at Hien. She couldn't stand him. You're in the limelight as soon as you come back. Even Peacock isn't as arrogant as you. Then I have to have the ability to be in the limelight. He Yen jumped down from the railing. Long time no see, my friends. Perhaps it was because they had stayed in the vanguard for a while, but the day training was much more difficult than in the ordinary barracks. Shi Tu, Jiang Jiao, Wang Ba, and Huang Xiong all looked darker and thinner than before. However, they were more energetic than before. Jiang Jiao asked, I didn't expect you to win such a battle in Jiang. Ahe, you're really good. I didn't fight. He Yen declined humbly. The commander-in-chief commanded well. How is it? You've made a contribution this time. Can you be promoted? Huang Xiong had been very practical. I don't know if I'll be promoted or not, but the commander-in-chief has promised to let me join the Southern Prefecture Army. He Yen said, I'm already very satisfied with this. Really? Hong Shan was so excited that his tone changed. Ahe, you've gotten what you wanted. Everyone congratulated him one after another. Only Shi Tu remained calm. He only asked He Yen, Brother He, why did Yuto suddenly attack Jiang? Did they come to Liangzhou before? He Yan's smile gradually faded, and his expression became serious. After a while, he said, De Wei might be going to war. Since Yudo had started it, they would not give up so easily. They had laid low for so many years just for this moment. For a moment, everyone fell silent. War, for the common people of the Great Way, for every single person, was not something worth being happy about. The room was dimly lit. The young man in front of the table was still reading the long scroll in his hand. Piles of military books were stacked together. There were so many things to do in the Liangzhou Guards that it was impossible to finish them all. Someone knocked on the door softly. Xiao Ju did not even raise her head. She only said, Come in. Shin Muxue came in. She carried a basket of food in her hand and carefully walked in. She placed the food basket on a small table and said softly, Commander-in-Chief, you've been reading for a long time. Eat something. Xiao Ju responded, but she did not intend to get up. Shin Muxue sighed softly. When Xiao Ju came back, she was still staying up late in the medical center. The soldiers of the Liangzhou Guards caught cold and heat easily during the changing seasons between spring and summer. Halfway through brewing medicine, she heard that Xiao Ju had returned. She really wanted to go and see her, but she had to give up on the idea because she had not finished her work. In addition, they were returning to Liangzhou from Jiang, which was a long journey. She thought that Xiao Ju needed more rest. However, she did not expect him to still be reading documents so late at night. However, Xiao Ju had always been like this. When she first met him, he was still like this. He had never changed. There are local products from Jiang on the ground. Take some back. Xiao Ju looked at the documents and said, There's no more space in the room. Shin Muxue nodded. She put down the food basket and went to tidy up the bundles on the ground. There were indeed a lot of bundles and wooden boxes. When she opened them, she saw that they were some fabrics, cakes, and dried fruits that were produced in Jiang. The Liangzhou Guards did not have such things. Some of the food could be added to their daily meals, and the soldiers would be very happy. The box at the top looked very exquisite. It was a round wooden box with a layer of paint on it. When she looked carefully, she saw that it was carved with a scene from the Water God Festival in Jiang. When she opened it, she saw that it was filled with ointment. When she put it under her nose, she could smell a faint floral fragrance. This thing was not particularly expensive, but it was exquisite and cute. Most girls liked it. The ointment boxes made in Liangzhou were not as special as the ones made in Jiang. The ointment inside was used to wipe the hands. Soaking in water or making medicinal herbs all day long would cause the skin to occasionally crack. Although Shin Muxue loved her skin very much and had prepared a lot of ointment, she was still very happy to see this. She picked up the box and placed it in her palm. She looked at Xiao Ju and was a little shy. She hesitated for a moment before she said softly, Thank you, Commander-in-Chief. I really like this ointment. When Xiao Ju heard this, she did not seem to understand what she was talking about. She turned her head and looked at the box in her hand. She paused for a moment before she said calmly, This is not for you. Shen Mushue's face instantly turned red. She quickly put the box down and said in a fluster, "I'm sorry, Commander-in-Chief. I thought it was for me." Although Xiao Ju did not say anything, she felt very embarrassed. It was as if she was overthinking things. "Take the other things, but don't touch the box." After Xiao Ju said this, she did not look at her anymore. Shen Mushue bit her lip and quickly tidied up the other bundles on the ground. Then she carried them out of the door. When she walked out of the door, her gaze lingered on the box on the table for a moment. The soldiers of the Liang province guards never cared about whether their skin was chapped or not. They also had to do a lot of training every day, so they would not go out of their way to find ointment that could moisturize their hands and feet. Even if they were very particular about it, they would not use such a beautiful box that was obviously meant for women. Xiao Ju would not use it either. Furthermore, when he said, "This is not for you," he meant that he was giving it to someone else. Who was he giving it to? A cool breeze blew at night. After seeing the liveliness of Jiang City, she was still not used to the desolation of the Liang province guards. There were no rivers or boats that passed through the city. There was only the silent Baiyue Mountain and the vast Wulu River, as well as the empty martial arts practice field at night. He Yen walked alone. She met her good friends in the Liang province guards and distributed the local products she brought back from Jiang to them in Hongshan. She chatted with them until late at night before she turned around and walked back into the house. She planned to ask Xiao Ju when she went back. From tomorrow onwards, she would be able to train with the Nan province guards. Who knew that on the way he would meet Chu Zhao? Chu Zhao did not having Xiang by his side. He walked alone. When he saw He Yen, he smiled and greeted him, "He. Brother Chu." He Yen looked around him to make sure he did not see anyone else. He asked curiously, "It's so late. Brother Chu, are you out for a walk alone?" Even if he was out for a walk, there were no trees or flowers around. It was too pitiful to walk alone. Chu Zhao was stunned. He smiled and shook his head. "No, I'm just looking for someone to help me." "What kind of help?" Chu Zhao opened his palm. There was a shirtu lying in his palm. This shirtu seemed to have been picked up from the Wulu River. It was strangely interesting. It was flat and looked like the shape of a white horse, but there was a circle of black edges around its tail. For some reason, there was an extra piece. "Ahi, do you think this shirtu looks like a horse?" Chu Zhao smiled, "But from here," he pointed at the end, "there's an extra piece. I want to find someone to help me chop this shirtu off. However, it's late at night and everyone seems to be asleep." So he was looking for someone to work with. He Yen looked at Chu Zhao. He thought that this person was so thin that he could be blown away by a gust of wind. He definitely would not be able to chop this shirtu off. It was just a matter of convenience, so he asked Chu Zhao, "Does Brother Chu have a saber?" Chu Zhao took out a dagger from his chest. This dagger looked very thin. The handle was shaped like a bamboo leaf. He Yen picked it up and was speechless for a moment. Scholars were really fastidious. However, this dagger was made like this. It was more decorative than useful. It was more suitable for cutting fruits. If it was really used for self-defense, it would make people laugh their heads off. He Yen disdainfully weighed it in his hand. Then he said, "Give me the shirtu." Chu Zhao handed the shirtu to him. He Yen put the shirtu on the ground. He pressed down on the horse's head with one hand and chopped down with the knife with the other. With a crisp sound, the extra piece of the horse's tail was cut off. At the same time, the tip of the dagger was also missing a piece. He Yen, he has good skills. Chu Zhao did not care about this point. He said happily, "I'll polish it a bit more. It will look very complete." He Yen could not understand Chu Zhao's behavior at all. Craftsmen did this kind of work for no other reason than to make a living. Chu Zhao seemed to really like it. He heard that there were princes, dukes, and ministers who loved to farm in their manors. He probably felt the same way. However, He Yen would never do something like carving a piece of shirtu in the middle of the night instead of sleeping. After all, he was a rough person who did not have any refined interests. Chu Zhao put the dagger back. He held the piece of shirtu in his hand and looked at He Yen with a smile. "Speaking of which, I always trouble you to do this kind of thing for me. but I can't do anything for you. I'm really ashamed. It's just a small matter. Brother Chu, you don't have to take it to heart. Throwing stone dumbbells is also a physical activity. It didn't take much effort to help you chop a piece of too. He Yan shrugged. Other than that, I haven't helped you much. Chu Zhao lowered his head and smiled. Didn't he also give me his clothes when we were in Jiang? At this point he seemed to blush and said in a low voice, although I didn't use them. But, thank you very much. He Yan said, that's what I should do. After all, she was busy with other things when such a weak person was in front of her. It was normal for her to help him. If it was someone else other than Chu Zhao, she would have done the same. Brother Chu, what do you plan to do in the future? He Yan asked. Do you plan to continue living in the Liang province guard? Chu Zhao's identity was strange to begin with. It did not seem to be beneficial for him to continue living in the Liang province guard. He Yan could not understand this either. He looked at Xiao Ju coldly and did not seem to have any intention of interfering. No. Chu Zhao shook his head. When the matter in Jiang is settled, I will return to the capital. Hasn't the matter in Jiang been settled? What is Brother Chu referring to? Chu Zhao looked at He Yan. In the night he smiled slightly. His smile was as gentle as before, but there was a deeper meaning behind it. He will understand in the future. Chapter 163. After helping Chu Zhao chop too, He Yan went back to her room. She didn't close the door when she left, so it was wide open. She could see Xiao Ju's room. Xiao Ju was sitting in front of the table. He wasn't reading the military pamphlet anymore. Under the light, his eyes were closed, and he was rubbing his forehead. He Yan thought to herself, poor thing. He hasn't even rested since he came back. She walked to Xiao Ju's side and bent down to look at Xiao Ju. The dim light fell on his face, making his handsome face look even more hazy. His eyelashes were thick and long, like tiny fans. She couldn't help but want to reach out and touch them. Just as her fingertips were about to touch his eyelashes, someone said, "What are you doing?" He Yan suddenly withdrew her hand. He had already opened his eyes, and his cold gaze swept past her face. Nothing. He Yan stood up straight as if nothing had happened. There's a bug on your face. I helped you get rid of it. Xiao Ju couldn't be bothered with her. It's already so late, He Yan said. Commander-in-Chief, you should sleep. You've been reading the military pamphlet for half a day. Aren't you going to rest? Xiao Ju rubbed her wrists. She looked a little tired. When they were in Jiang, they lived in the same room. There wasn't even a central door to shelter them. But at that time, they didn't have much to do except for the last few days. Every day, they just turned off the lights and went to bed early. Once they returned to Jiang, there were many things to do. I'll sleep after I finish reading, he said. Am I going to train with the Nanfu army tomorrow? He Yan asked, do I need to tell Liang Jiaodo? Xiao Ju, no, I've already told Liang Ping. He Yan nodded. You don't seem to be worried? He raised his eyebrows. Why should I be worried? The Nanfu army's daily training is much more than the Liang province guard's daily training. I already knew that. He Yan sighed and said, people always strive for greater heights. Of course. She was not worried about things like training. It was nothing more than suffering. Suffering in the South Prefecture Army was much better than suffering in the Liang Province Guard. At least he had a better future. As she spoke, she caught a glimpse of a food basket on the small table beside her. The small table was previously filled with Cui Yueji's local produce, but it should have been cleaned up by someone at this moment. The food basket was particularly conspicuous. He Yan asked, Commander-in-Chief, have you not eaten? What is it? You can't not eat. He Yan helped him open the food basket. The food inside was extremely sumptuous, with meat, vegetables, and snacks. He Yan let out a sound and sighed in admiration. Are the dishes of the Liang province guard this good now? However, after a moment, he refuted himself. That's not right. This should be your personal meal, right? It's good to be a commander-in-chief. Even the food you eat is so exquisite. Of all the generals in Dawei, You eat the best. Xiao Ju was speechless. You've seen it before? He Yen thought to himself that she had indeed seen it before. When she was a General Fei Hong, the food she ate was not even half of what Xiao Ju ate. It was good enough to have meat, let alone snacks. Perhaps this was because Xiao Ju was the second son of the Xiao family, and she was from an ordinary family when she joined the army. Generals were divided into different ranks. However, the Liang Province Guard's chef was really good at cooking. The flowers carved on the snacks were really beautiful. He Yen called out to him, "Commander-in-Chief, come and eat. The food is getting cold." Xiao Ju glanced at her. Seeing that this person was so enthusiastic, he seemed to be the owner of an inn. He thought it was funny, but after a moment, his expression returned to normal. He walked to the table and sat down. In Jiang, the two of them often ate at the same table. It had long become a habit. He Yen subconsciously gave him a pair of chopsticks and took a pair for herself. In fact, she had already eaten that night. It was the familiar biscuit of the Liang Province Guard. She had a big appetite, and at this moment, she had forgotten that she was not in Jiang and was not Wen Yuyen. She happily reached out and picked up a piece of sugar cake. After picking it up, He Yen came to her senses and looked up at the person sitting opposite her. The young man looked at her calmly and raised his eyebrows slightly. "I'll just eat a little," He Yen said. "Commander-in-Chief won't be so stingy, right?" She was becoming more and more daring in front of Xiao Ju. When she had just entered the Liang Province Guards, even if you beat He Yen to death, he would never have thought that there would be a day when she would act so wantonly in front of Xiao Ju. "Don't talk while eating," the second son of the Xiao family said coldly. He Yen stuffed the sweet biscuit into her mouth. She looked at the elegant way the person opposite her ate and mumbled, "Commander-in-Chief, this beard is so hot." "What are you talking about?" He Yen swallowed the food in his mouth. "I'm saying this chef is so nice. He made all the dishes that Commander-in-Chief likes to eat. Of course, I like to eat them too." Xiao Ju's lips twitched. "What don't you like to eat?" He Yen was used to teasing others, but he had long since stopped taking it to heart. At this moment, she accidentally saw a palm-sized wooden box on the table. She picked it up and was stunned when she saw the picture of Jiang City's Water God Festival engraved on the wooden box. "Is this a gift from Master Cui?" Xiao Ju replied, "Yes." He Yen opened it and saw that it seemed to be ointment for wiping hands. He leaned closer and sniffed it. There was a faint floral fragrance. He could not help but exclaim, "The things in Jiang City are really exquisite. Master Cui looks tall and big, but I didn't expect him to be so meticulous. He even prepared this for you." Xiao Ju sneered. "I don't need it." But He Yen was puzzled. "Isn't it pretty? It's pungent." He Yen was speechless. As the son of a wealthy family, he really had high standards. Such a light and pleasant smell was described as pungent by him. He Yen asked, "Wouldn't it be a pity if you don't use his kind intentions? You can take it if you like it." Xiao Ju was impatient. He Yen asked, "Really?" She saw that Xiao Ju did not refute and knew that Xiao Ju was not joking. She immediately put the wooden box containing the ointment away. The box was small, but it reminded her of something that she had forgotten. He Yen had been injured during the battle with the Yuto at the Cui residence in Jiang. Lin Shuanghe had given her a box of scar removal and muscle growth medicine. It was exactly the same as the box that Shen Muxue had given her. Lin Shuanghe had said that only Xiao Ju had this medicine. She thought for a while and looked at Xiao Ju. She asked tentatively, "Commander-in-Chief, did you ask Miss Shen to give me a box of scar removal medicine?" Xiao Ju's hand paused. She asked, "You don't want it? You really gave it to me?" He Yen hesitated. Do you also think that scars on a woman's body are shameful and should not be talked about?" Su Zhiheng had been like this. Although she did not say anything, some things stayed in her heart and could not be dispelled. This situation was familiar. If all the men in the world thought this way, she would not be surprised. But if this person was Xiao Ju, He Yen thought that she would be disappointed. Even if this disappointment did not make sense. Xiao Ju looked at her indifferently. "You think too much." He Yen was stunned. The young man's voice was very calm. It's just a scar. Everyone has it. You don't have to be nervous or care. If you can treat it, then treat it. If you can't, then forget it. You don't have to be so harsh on yourself. Don't have to be so harsh on herself? He-Yen lowered her head. She did not say anything, but her hand held the wooden box of ointment very tightly. After a while, she said softly, "It seems that I was too narrow-minded." Perhaps she really did not have to be so harsh on herself. The next morning, He-Yen went to the South Prefecture Army for daily training. The South Prefecture Army was different from the Liang Province Army. When He-Yen first arrived at the Liang Province Army, the soldiers were all new recruits. The new recruits were lively and lively. They mingled with each other all day long. Occasionally, they would find time to laugh and laugh during training. The South Prefecture Army, on the other hand, were all veterans. During daily training, they were very serious. No one spoke. As he spoke, He-Yen jumped onto the railing next to the martial arts practice field. She liked to sit on it and swing her legs like a swing. However, as soon as she jumped onto it, something rolled out from her bosom. It landed next to Shirtu's feet. Shirtu bent down and picked up the thing on the ground. Xiaomai asked, "What's this? Can it be eaten?" "It looks like a hand ointment." Huang Xiong asked, "I've seen my little sister use it before. What's the picture on it?" "It's a picture of the Water God Festival in Jiang City," He-Yen said. "That's all." "What's wrong with you?" Wang Ba looked away in disgust. "Hand ointment? Isn't that stuff for women? You're a man, how can you use this stuff? Isn't it disgusting?" "He-Yen, why can't men use hand ointment? I'm being particular. You bandits obviously don't understand these things. What right do you have to look down on us bandits?" Wang Ba was furious. "We bandits are also divided into different ranks." Seeing that they were about to quarrel again, Jiang Jiao hurriedly stepped forward to persuade them. "All right, stop quarreling. However, Brother He, we practice martial arts every day. If you use this, it won't be of much use, right?" He was afraid that she would just moisten her hands a little today and cut them open tomorrow. The speed at which she moistened her hands was not as fast as the speed at which she cut them open. After all, who didn't have scars on their hands during their daily training at the martial arts practice field? Thinking about how she applied ointment that emitted a faint fragrance on her hands a moment ago and then threw a huge stone lock up and down in the next, the onlookers probably thought that she was crazy. He-Yen vaguely said, "It's just a token of appreciation from the people of Jiang. Don't waste it." As he spoke, he reached out to take the box of ointment from Shirtu. His hand was halfway out when a gentle female voice rang out, "What's this?" Everyone turned to look and saw that it was Shin Mushua. In the darkness of the night, she held a lantern in one hand and a basket full of medicinal herbs in the other. Her white clothes were elegant and beautiful, and she looked like a fairy who had descended to the mortal world. Her gaze fell on the box in Shirtu's hand. She hesitated. "This is hand ointment?" "That's right," Hongshan said. "Can I take a look at it?" Naturally, no one refused the beautiful female doctor's request. Shin Mushue took the box in front of her eyes. When she saw the pattern of the water god drawn on the box, her eyes flashed. After a moment, she raised her head and looked at everyone. "Whose hand ointment is this?" "Mine," Hien said. Shin Mushue looked at her. At this time, the night was about to end, and the martial arts practice field was only illuminated by dim torches. The young man sat on the railing with a lazy smile on his face. His handsome facial features were covered with a layer of gentle color, especially his pair of eyes. They were bright and moving. If they were on a woman's face, it would be unimaginably captivating. Shen Mushue was shocked by this ridiculous thought of his. He-Yen reached out to take the box. Shin Mushue took a step back and didn't return it to him. He only asked softly, Was this given to you by the commander-in-chief?" She had seen it before? He-Yen nodded. "Yes." Shin Mushue's body stiffened. He-Yen saw that her expression was a little strange. He thought for a moment and then asked, "Miss Shen, do you like this box? If you like it, I can give it to you." In fact, Jiang Jiao's words made sense. It was a waste of God's gift for her to use this hand ointment. Her hands were full of calluses and scars from knives and rods. If her hands were tender and tender, he was afraid that she wouldn't even be able to pull a bow. It would have been better if he hadn't said this. As soon as he said this, Shen Muxue suddenly raised her head. Her usually gentle eyes were unexpectedly filled with anger. She stuffed the box into He Yan's hands and said coldly, "No need." Then she turned around and left with the basket. He Yan didn't even have time to say goodbye to her. Although Shen Muxue's temperament was cold in the Liangzhou guards, he had never gotten angry or spoken harshly to anyone before. This was the first time he had done something like this to show that he was angry. Xiao Mai tugged at the corner of He Yan's clothes. "Ai he gu, Miss Shen seems to be angry." "But He Yan, how would I know why?" She and Shen Muxue had always minded their own business. This was the first time they had spoken after coming back. Shen Muxue's reaction was really puzzling. "Does she like you?" Huang Xiong rubbed the prayer beads around his neck. "Is she angry because you don't know how to flirt?" "Forget it. Why would Shen Muxue like him?" Wang Ba snorted. "What are you dreaming about in broad daylight?" "Forget it." Jiang Jiao patted He Yan's shoulder. "Brother He, you should pay more attention to your daily behavior. Don't cause misunderstandings." He seemed to have thought of his fiancée who had passed away prematurely. His gaze was sad. "It's not good to waste her life." He Yan. Because of Shen Muxue's incident, He Yan and his brothers discussed why Shen Muxue was angry. In the end, they didn't come to a conclusion. In the end, the conclusion was, maybe she just didn't like He Yan. There was no other reason. Every once in a while, a woman would dislike someone for a few days. After finishing dinner with his friends, the sky was completely dark. He Yan walked back to his room. Halfway there, he saw Chu Zhao again. "It's so late. Why you still outside?" He Yan greeted him. "Are you also picking up Shirtu today?" Chu Zhao heard this and laughed. "Why does it sound like I'm an idiot when brother He says it?" "My friend told me." Although it was hard to say this, He Yan still said it. "Maybe Dr. Shen admires me?" Chu Zhao looked at her in a daze. After a while he laughed out loud. He had always paid attention to his appearance. This kind of behavior was already considered out of line. After laughing for a while, Chu Zhao said, "Brother He, although you look very romantic and elegant now, but..." He Yan was puzzled. She wasn't that bad. Looking at Chu Zhao's laughing face, it was as if liking her was something unreasonable. After all, didn't Song Taotao like her very much back then? "Brother He, don't worry." Chu Zhao coughed lightly. "Dr. Shen will definitely not like Brother He. Brother He, you don't have to worry about this at all." He Yan. "But..." "Because Dr. Shen has liked Military Governor Xiao for many years. She only has Military Governor Xiao in her heart. How can anyone else enter her eyes?" He Yan was stunned. After a while, she asked, "Dr. Shen likes Military Governor Xiao? Brother He doesn't know?" Chu Zhao was also very surprised by her reaction. After thinking for a bit, he said, "That's true. You're a new recruit of the Liang Province Guard, so you shouldn't know about these things. However, our colleagues in the Imperial Court all know that Dr. Shen has liked Military Governor Xiao for many years. The eldest miss of the Imperial Censor Manor, if she didn't really like someone, why would she abandon her status as the eldest miss and come to this kind of bitter and cold place to be a little female doctor?" Chu Zhao smiled and said, "It can be seen that she really likes Military Governor Xiao." He Yan suddenly understood. In that instant, she suddenly remembered why she felt such a familiar feeling when she saw Shen Muxue for the first time. In reality, it wasn't the first time she saw Shen Muxue. She had seen her once when she was young. At that time, Shen Muxue was even younger than she was now, but she had already grown to be exceptionally beautiful. On the day that the students of the Xianchang Gymnasium went hunting in the mountains, the emperor personally came. All of the civil and military officials were also present. Shen Muxue, as the youngest daughter of Imperial Censor Shen, attracted the attention of all of the youths at that time. He Yan was also among that group of youths. When he saw the elegant young girl wearing a rabbit fur cloak and holding a stove in her hands, who was as beautiful as a fairy from the ninth heaven, his heart was filled with envy. At that time, Shenmuxue had always been looking at Xiaoju. Chapter 164. He Yen still remembered that at that time on the hunting grounds, they were all teenagers. When they suddenly saw such a beautiful young girl, they were naturally attracted to her. It seemed to be Lin Shuanghe. He even said, "Such a beautiful girl. If I say that she is worthy of being the #1 beauty in Shuo City, no one would object, right?" No objection, no objection. I didn't think that with Imperial Censor Shen's bad temper, his daughter would be so beautiful. Imperial Censor Shen was an upright and sharp person. He dared to speak frankly in front of Emperor Wen Xian. Normally he was very strict. If anyone in the court made a slight mistake, he would report it. However, when the previous emperor was alive, he had praised Imperial Censor Shen for his De Wei character. The current Empress Dowager also liked him very much. His position was stable and could not be shaken. His colleagues in the court could only stay away from him. The more his colleagues isolated Imperial Censor Shen, the more Emperor Wen Xian felt that Imperial Censor Shen was pitiful and upright. He was a clear stream among the officials, so he was especially tolerant of him. With such a bad temper as Shi as a father, his daughter was born with a completely different beauty. If an old man was not easy to get close to, his temper would be strange and harsh. If an elegant girl was not easy to get close to, it would be cold and otherworldly. He Yen still remembered that although Shenmuxue was a girl and was not very old at the time, when the hunting ended and the Xiaoju came out to receive the emperor's reward, the cloak fell to the ground. Originally, it should have been picked up by one of his servants, but that fairy-like eldest young Miss Shen walked forward herself, held the cloak, and handed it to Xiaoju on the horse. The group of teenagers was shocked. Someone said sourly, "It's over, it's over. We were talking excitedly here, but this girl took a fancy to Brother Huaijin. Why does this girl like Brother Huaijin so much? At least leave us some face." Lin Shuanghe waved his fan and sighed. Naturally, it's because this eldest Miss Shin is also someone who looks at faces. He Yen also followed the crowd's gaze and saw that the young man on the horse was unruly and dissolute, while the lady below the horse was reserved and elegant. Just based on their appearance alone, they could be called an immortal couple. They were very compatible. She silently lowered her head and looked at her empty hands that had not caught a single prey. She sighed silently in her heart. Outstanding people should be together with outstanding people. The only thing she could do was to stand far away and watch others in high spirits. "Brother He?" Chu Zhao's voice pulled He Yen back from his thoughts. He Yen regained his senses and asked, "But Miss Shen came all the way to Liangzhou. Will Censor Shen agree?" Imperial Censor Shen only had one son and one daughter. Compared to his strictness towards his eldest son, he was much more doting towards his youngest daughter. Shenmuxue looked well-behaved and well-mannered. Although He Yen did not think that it was an unforgivable sin for a woman to go to the military camp, in the eyes of most people, it was a betrayal. As an imperial censor, how could Censor Shen allow his daughter to act so recklessly? Miss Shen is determined to leave. Censor Shen can't change her mind. Besides, Chu Zhao smiled. Speaking of which, when General Xiao was still alive, he had a close relationship with the Shen family. Censor Shen and General Xiao were good friends. After the Xiao family's incident, Censor Shen also helped a lot. Military Governor Xiao is young and promising. Censor Shen trusts him and... He paused. I'm afraid that he also has some thoughts of becoming in-laws with the Xiao family. He Yan's heart skipped a beat and unconsciously retorted, "How is that possible?" Chu Zhao looked at her as if he didn't understand He Yan's reaction. Why is it impossible? The governor usually doesn't get close to women. He Yan pretended to be indifferent. He only cares about military affairs. From what I see, he doesn't have much contact with Shenmuxue. Xiao Ju was cold to everyone, and she never treated Shenmuxue well. You're a girl, Chu Zhao smiled. You don't understand men's thoughts. If there's such an excellent and gentle girl who doesn't say anything every day and silently accompanies him on his campaigns, even a cold-hearted person will be moved. Being moved will turn into pity, pity will turn into love. Since Governor Xiao didn't chase her away, it was because he felt pity for her. He Yen pursed her lips and didn't speak. She only felt that Chu Zhao's words were not pleasant to hear. If it were you, would you also change from pity to love? He Yen asked. Chu Zhao froze for a moment, then shook his head and said, no. Then why wouldn't you? Chu Zhao looked at her, a trace of a smile in his eyes. I don't like gentle girls. I like girls who are lively and lively. He Yen glanced at him and didn't speak. It was hard to imagine that such a gentle and quiet person like Chu Zhao would actually like lively and lively girls. The room was right in front of them. Chu Zhao smiled. I'll leave you here. Rest early tonight, you still have day training tomorrow. He Yen nodded, thanked him, and entered the room. The door was closed today. He didn't know if Xiao Ju was asleep or not. If it were any other day, He Yen would probably knock on the door and pick the lock to say a few words. However, today she wasn't in the mood. After washing up, she lay on the bed and thought about what Chu Zhao said just now. She couldn't help but feel a little upset. Xiao Ju and Shenmu Xue? She didn't think so at first, but after hearing what Chu Zhao said tonight, she suddenly realized that there were some things she had overlooked. Why was there only one female doctor in the Liang Province Guard, Shenmu Xue? She had heard Shen Han call Shenmu Xue Miss Shen. Those military instructors were not only grateful to Shenmu Xue, but also respected her. So it was because of this. Imperial Censor Shen's daughter, General Zhao's son. Their family backgrounds were similar, their appearances were similar, and even their fathers were good friends. He Yen turned over and faced the wall. He thought bitterly that they really were a good match. The next day, it was day training again. With the experience of the first day, he was much more familiar on the second day. The day training in the Nanfu army didn't have a two-person unit. Since there were no battles, it was peaceful. In addition, the Nanfu army mostly trained in troop formations. He Yen was already familiar with troop formations. He could keep up with the changes in troop formations and never be a burden. This made Tian Lang feel a little surprised. How is it? Shen Han looked at He Yen in the troop formation and asked Tian Lang, is this kid okay? Although He Yen was now a member of the Nanfu army, he was still a member of the Liang Province Guard. Shen Han was very concerned about him. Moreover, this kid had a close relationship with Xiao Ju. Shen Han thought that he should always pay attention to He Yen. Tian Lang said, his aptitude isn't bad. Shen Han was amused. When He Yen had just arrived at the Liang Province Guard, Xiao Ju had personally judged him to be lacking in aptitude. At that time, none of the military instructors thought highly of He Yen. They thought that He Yen would be forced to be a vanguard soldier sooner or later. They didn't expect that He Yen would go the furthest now. As expected, no one could say for sure what happened on the battlefield. The other military instructors also came over. Currently, the recruits of the Liang Province Guard were resting. The Nanfu army didn't have much time to rest, so they came over to see how He Yen was adapting. He didn't embarrass the Liang Province Guard. Liang Ping was very proud. He even pretended to be modest as he said, Deputy Chief Tian, please teach this kid more in the future. Don't worry about our reputation. Teach him a lesson when you need to. Tian Lang was speechless. Ma Damei smiled and said, Deputy Chief Tian, this young man learns very quickly. It's not that the Liang Province Guard is boasting. If you teach him more, he'll definitely surprise you often in the future. Tian Lang was speechless. To him, He Yen was just a recruit with decent aptitude who happened to be trusted by Xiao Ju. However, in terms of skill, there were too many outstanding people in the Nanfu army. There was no need to mention the Nine Flags Battalion. It was just that the Liang Province Guard was located in a remote area. It wasn't easy for them to find someone like this. They worshipped him like a bodhisattva. Their foresight was still limited. While they were talking, a woman in a moon-white dress walked over from afar. There was only one woman in the Liang Province Guard. Everyone greeted her, Miss Shen, Shin Muxue walked over. She put down the basket in her hands and said, I picked some medicinal herbs. I've already washed and dried them. I'll have to trouble the military instructors to boil these herbs into a medicinal concoction. It's the turn of spring and summer, so each soldier can drink a spoonful to ward off the cold. Shen Han hurriedly thanked her. Thank you for your hard work, Miss Shen. He turned around and ordered someone to take the basket away. He immediately went to boil the medicinal concoction. Shin Muxue wasn't in a hurry to leave. Instead, she looked at the soldiers who were training below the training field. Her gaze fell on the small and thin figure in the group. He Yen was mixed in with them. Although he wasn't very eye-catching, it was impossible for people to ignore him. In the past few years, she had followed Xiaoju to many different places and met many different people. There were so many recruits coming and going, but only this one left a deep impression on her. Like the nimble wind, he was completely different from the people around him. That box of hand ointment, it was clearly just a box of ordinary ointment. She rarely liked things, so showing her desire was just a matter of convenience for Xiaoju. However, Xiaoju stopped her. Not long after, she found this ointment in He Yan's hands. Xiaoju rejected her because of He Yan? For a very capable youth who might become a trusted aide in the future, it was natural for her to take care of him a little more. Shin Muxue understood. However, even if Xiaoju trusted her trusted aides, Qi Wu and Fei Nu, she wouldn't be so meticulous. It was as if she was treating a girl. Thinking about it this way, Shin Muxue felt that Xiaoju treated He Yan a little too well. This was obviously Cheng Lisu's house. After Cheng Lisu left, He Yan didn't move out. For a recruit to live next to the right army's commander-in-chief, it was a little strange. Towards He Yan, Xiaoju didn't show any signs of rejection. She even acquiesced to many of his actions. It was this little bit of indulgence that made Shin Muxue feel uneasy. It was probably because a woman's mind was very meticulous and her intuition was very accurate. This time, after Xiaoju and He Yan came back, Shin Muxue felt that something was wrong. She didn't want to leave now and wanted to stay in the martial arts arena for a little longer. She said, I boiled some in advance. You can drink it first. The medicine barrel is not far away. I'll have to trouble the instructors to find a young man to come with me to get it. Shin Han said, It's not worth Miss Shin's trouble. I'll go with you. After he finished speaking, he informed everyone and walked away with Shin Muxue. Looking at Shin Muxue's departing figure, Liang Ping sighed, Miss Shin is so kind and beautiful. How can there be such a perfect woman in the world? If I can marry her, even if I die, it'll be worth it. I think you're dreaming. On the other side, an instructor heard this and mocked him. Miss Shin is someone an ordinary person like you can dream of. You have to know that there are so many talented young men in the imperial court who don't even look at them. Why would she look at a small instructor like you? Instructor, what's wrong? Liang Ping was unconvinced. Since Miss Shin is willing to put down her status and come to a place like Liangzhou, she doesn't look down on us rough people and even boiled medicine for us to drink. It's obvious that she doesn't mind the poor and loves the rich. She's a noble and kind person. This kind of person only looks at people's character. He muttered in a low voice, My character is very good. What if Ma Damei couldn't listen anymore. She didn't put down her status for you. That's right, Ulshin. She did it for Military Governor Xiao. What do you have to compare yourself with Military Governor Xiao? Are you as handsome as Military Governor Xiao? Are you as good as Military Governor Xiao in martial arts? Or do you have a family background, talent, elegance, and strategy? You're not as good as her in every aspect, yet you still dare to boast shamelessly here. If I, Miss Shen, heard your impudent words, I would have already asked my servants to beat you to death with a stick to save you from ruining her reputation. Liang Ping, are you still my brothers? As he spoke, he heard a piercing voice, Instructor. Everyone looked over and saw that the Nanfu soldiers were resting. He Yan immediately saw the instructors standing on the stage and came over to greet them. Perhaps it was because he wasn't considered a member of the Liang Province Guards anymore and his superior had become Tian Lang, So He Yen treated his former instructors more like friends. She flipped onto the stage and walked to the center of the crowd. She greeted them one by one, then asked with a smile, "What were you guys talking about just now? It's so lively." "We were talking about a toad among us, fantasizing about eating swan meat." One of the instructors giggled as he replied. He Yen asked curiously, "What do you mean by that?" "We were talking about Dr. Shin," Ma Damei explained with a smile. "We were saying that Dr. Shin's status is noble, her character is noble, and everyone loves her." He Yen was startled. Then, someone who didn't know the difference between life and death came closer and said mysteriously to He Yen, "Brother He, do you know what Dr. Shin's background is?" If this was before last night, He Yen would have been surprised. However, after learning about Shin Mushue's identity from Chu Zhao, he didn't find it strange anymore. That person wasn't someone who could keep secrets. Before He Yen could speak, he said, "Dr. Shin is the current young miss of the Imperial Censor's residence. If it wasn't for Military Governor Xiao, why would someone of such noble status travel thousands of miles? If I had such a beautiful person to treat me like this, I would definitely only treat her well in my entire life." He Yen wondered if she had been fighting with the name Shin Mushue recently. One by one, why did they all line up to stab her in the heart? "What you're saying isn't reliable." Liang Ping refused to admit defeat and stubbornly insisted, "If Military Governor Xiao really likes Miss Shin, why hasn't he said anything until now? I'm a man, I know best. If a man likes a woman, it's impossible for him to hide it. If he can hide it, he won't like her that much. The world is so big, why would Miss Shin hang herself on one tree? It's better to open your eyes wide and look at the people around you. Who knows, maybe fate is right next to you." "Liang Ping, you're really sick, and seriously sick. I think Dr. Shin should give you some medicine to look at your eyes. What's wrong with your brain? How can you say such shameless things?" Everyone was making a ruckus. Tian Lang quietly took a step to the side. He didn't want to participate in the gossip about his superior. If he was caught, he wouldn't be able to bear the consequences. He Yen also wanted to slip away. He didn't want to listen to these heart-wrenching words, but the crowd refused to let her go. One of the instructors patted her shoulder and said, "Brother He, why aren't you saying anything? You're also one of us. Why don't you say something? Isn't Dr. Shin and Military Governor Xiao a match made in heaven? Isn't old Shin overestimating herself?" He Yen, everyone looked at her eagerly, as if this comment of hers was very important. He Yen braced herself. Her heart was full of unwillingness, and she forced a smile and said, "Yes, Miss Shin is a socialite and beautiful, as dazzling as the spring. Military Governor Xiao is like jade and gold, handsome and handsome. They're a match made in heaven." As soon as she said that, she felt so wrong that it almost overflowed. She thought to herself, who did she offend? It's fine if other people poke at her heart, but she still had to poke at herself. What about their identities? Aren't their identities very compatible? He Yen. Yes, the Commander-in-Chief of the Right Corps and Miss Censor are people of the same world. They have nothing to do with us. Brother He, you're now very trusted by the Commander-in-Chief. Who knows, when the Commander-in-Chief gets married, he might even invite you to attend the ceremony. This is something worth celebrating. Shouldn't you start saving money now and prepare a wedding gift? He Yen firmly painted the face of the person who spoke in his mind. He gritted his teeth in his heart, but on the surface, he still pretended to be calm and indifferent. Of course. This is a good thing worth celebrating. It's necessary to prepare a big gift. Everyone roared with laughter and actually started to give He Yen suggestions. When Xiao Ju and Shin Mushue got married, what should they prepare as a gift? Unexpectedly, no one noticed He Yan's stiff expression. Are you all very free? A cold voice sounded behind them. Everyone turned around to look. Unknowingly, Xiao Ju had arrived. Behind her was Shin Mushue and Shin Han, who was carrying a medicine bucket. Knowing that they were caught gossiping about their superior's private affairs, everyone was so scared that they kept quiet out of fear and did not dare to say a word. They still had a trace of hope in their hearts that Xiao Ju probably did not hear much. Otherwise, based on his temperament, he would have stopped them the moment he heard it. Now that he said it, it was possible that he had just arrived. Xiao Ju walked forward. His dark blue brocade robe accentuated his jade-like complexion, his appearance as handsome as the moon. However, his voice was also cold. Although his words were directed at the crowd, his eyes were fixed on He Yan, his gaze as sharp and deep as a blade. You all have the time to gossip here? I see that you all are doing very well in your daily training. The instructors immediately turned into quails. No one dared to speak. Tian Lang's heart was greatly comforted. Fortunately, he was discerning and did not associate himself with this group of motley crew. See, didn't he get caught? Immediately, he stood even straighter proudly, showing that he was different from the others. Shen Han was also complaining incessantly in his heart. If he had known earlier, he would have asked Liang Ping and Shen Muxue to go get the medicine bucket together. When he and Shen Muxue came back, they saw Xiao Ju walking towards the martial arts arena. The three of them came together. When they arrived, they saw everyone asking He Yan if Xiao Ju and Shen Muxue were compatible. The person who asked this question was definitely harboring evil intentions. How could they ask He Yan to answer this kind of question? Wasn't this stabbing a knife into his heart? Before he could see clearly which genius asked this question, he heard He Yan's answer without hesitation. Yes, Miss Shin is a socialite and beautiful. She is as dazzling as the spring. Military Governor Xiao is as beautiful as jade and as handsome as gold. They are a match made in heaven. Shen Han could immediately feel the chilliness emanating from the people around him. He carefully sneaked a glance at Xiao Ju. His expression was ugly, as if his wife had been snatched away. Shen Han beat his chest and stamped his feet in his heart. Why did he always have to encounter such embarrassing situations? He had been honest and cautious all his life and had never done anything bad. Why was it so difficult? He Yan looked at Xiao Ju. The young military governor was looking at him expressionlessly. A trace of mockery appeared at the corner of his mouth. As a recruit, you are hanging out with the instructor. Since you are so energetic, it seems like your daily training is not enough. He turned to Tian Lang and said indifferently, He Yan's daily training can be doubled. Tian Lang. Xiao Ju raised his eyebrows and said coldly, Why aren't you going? He Yan looked at him and said, Yes. He turned and jumped off the stage and walked towards the group. She could feel that Xiao Ju was dissatisfied with her. But, shouldn't she be the one who was angrier? He Yan joined the group and picked up his spear again. His gaze fell on the figure on the stage. Shen Muxue stood beside him. The jade-like beauty was a match made in heaven. He Yan lowered his head. The instructors present were all punished one by one and left dejectedly. Before they left, they were warned that if anyone dared to speak nonsense in the Liang Province Guard, they would pack up their bags and go back home. Tian Lang had already used the excuse of having to drill the troop formation to slip away. Only Shen Han and Shen Muxue, who wished they could become decorations, were left on the training field. Shen Muxue stood behind Xiao Ju and looked at his tall and straight back. An indescribable bitterness welled up in her heart. Just now, she and Shen Han had walked here and heard that someone had brought her and Xiao Ju together to talk. Other than feeling embarrassed and angry, she was actually happy. She liked hearing these things. She liked hearing her name and Xiao Ju's name being tied together. It was as if this could prove her relationship with Xiao Ju. It also hinted that she was a special person to Xiao Ju. So when she heard He Yan say this, Shen Muxue was very happy. But when she raised her head and saw Xiao Ju's cold gaze, she was stunned. She didn't dare to say that she completely understood Xiao Ju, but she still understood this man's emotions. He didn't like to hear people say this. It was completely different from how happy he was. Xiao Ju was even a little angry. Why would someone be angry when they heard this? There was only one reason. The person who heard it didn't like him at all. Xiao Ju didn't like him. Shen Muxue's expression darkened. In his sadness, there was also some doubt. If he didn't like it, he could ignore it. But this kind of anger was still a little unexpected. Xiao Ju was a person who didn't show his emotions. He didn't care about many things. He cared a lot. Why? Chapter 165. The sky gradually darkened. The instructors finished drinking the medicinal concoction that was prepared for them. Ever since Lin Shuanghe came to the Liang Province Guard, Lin Shuanghe was in charge of Xiao Ju's medicinal concoction. Therefore, there was no one she could talk to. Shen Muxue stood there. Xiao Ju was focused on the Nan Fu soldiers' daily training and had no intention of talking to her. After a while, she naturally felt awkward. She was, after all, the noble daughter of the imperial censor manor. Her self-esteem was ingrained in her bones. She could give up everything to share Xiao Ju's trials and tribulations. She could give up her luxurious life as the daughter of an official and come to this harsh and cold place to be a female doctor. However, she couldn't be like those girls from ordinary families, or even the servants, who could express their feelings to Xiao Ju in a frank and direct manner. Shen Muxue had always hoped that as long as she stayed by Xiao Ju's side, Xiao Ju would one day discover her good points and tell her that they were the most compatible person in the world. This was her reserved nature. She had never worried about it. After all, in all these years, Xiao Ju had many beautiful women who threw themselves at him, but he had never been moved by any of them. Xiao Ju was not interested in women. But now, Shen Muxue was confused. She had a bad feeling about some things. What if Xiao Ju fell in love with someone else before Xiao Ju saw her good points? Shen Muxue could not imagine such a scene. She picked up the empty bamboo basket and turned to leave without saying goodbye to Xiao Ju. Xiao Ju did not like to be disturbed when he was training. After all these years, she had already figured out Xiao Ju's preferences. "Miss Shen." Someone called out to her. Shen Muxue raised her head. The man in front of her was wearing a wide-sleeved robe. He smiled and pointed forward. "If you keep walking with your head down, you'll bump into Shi too." Not far away, there was a huge rock. The new recruits of the Liang Province Guard often liked to grind their swords on this huge rock and slash randomly. Now, it was full of bumps and hollows, and there were even people who had carved a mess of curses on it. She was so distracted earlier that she didn't even notice such a large piece of Shi. If it weren't for Chu Zhao's reminder, she would have bumped into it. Shen Muxue stopped and bowed to Chu Zhao. "Fourth young Master Chu." She knew that Xiao Ju and Chu Zhao had different standpoints. After all, Chu Zhao was Prime Minister Su's favorite student. It was just that Chu Zhao was born with good looks and a gentle temperament, so it was very difficult for ordinary women to have any ill feelings towards him. Shen Muxue was the same. When they met on a daily basis, he never lost his manners. Miss Shun seems to have something on her mind. Chu Zhao smiled. "Are you worried about Military Governor Xiao?" Shen Muxue was startled. She instantly panicked, as if someone had seen through her thoughts. However, she quickly calmed down and quietly said, "It's nothing. I'm just thinking about the medicinal theory in the medical book I read today. Fourth young Master Chu is overthinking it." Chu Zhao nodded and was about to continue walking forward. The instant they passed each other, Shen Muxue's heart stirred. She suddenly asked, "Fourth young Master Chu seems to be on good terms with a new recruit of the Liang Province Guard named He Yen?" Shen Muxue had seen Chu Zhao and He Yen talk a few times. Although Chu Zhao was normally amiable and approachable, never putting on the airs of a young master from an official's family, he was definitely not an enthusiastic and talkative person. In the Liang Province Guard, apart from talking to that excessively beautiful servant girl, he didn't have much interaction with anyone else. However, when he talked to He Yen, his attitude was very cordial. "Brother He?" Chu Zhao paused. "Brother He is a good friend of mine in the Liang Province Guard. Why is Miss Shun looking for him?" Since he admitted it so directly, Shen Muxue didn't know what to ask. After a moment, she looked towards Chu Zhao. "When the Yudo sent troops to Jiang, I heard that fourth young Master Chu was also there. He even stayed with the governor and the others at the Middle Cavalry Daren's residence. Fourth young Master Chu is also a good friend of He Yen. Presumably, you know quite a bit about He Yen." Chu Zhao quietly listened to her speak. Shen Muxue hesitated for a moment before asking, "How is the governor's relationship with He Yen? Do they get along well?" Miss Shen's question is a bit strange. Chu Zhao's gaze swept past the woman in front of him. Shen Muxue nervously tugged at the corner of her skirt. Chu Zhao smiled. Brother, he is very skilled and straightforward. Military Governor Xiao trusts him a lot. Miss Shen should know better than anyone that Military Governor Xiao is definitely not someone who is easy to get close to. However, brother, he is not an ordinary person. He seems to have easily opened Military Governor Zhao's heart. Rather than saying that they are a master and a trusted subordinate, I think that Military Governor Xiao and brother he are more like friends. Friends? Shen Mushue's voice became slightly sharp for a moment. She frowned. How can the governor of the Right Corps and a new recruit be friends with such a big difference in status? Chu Zhao smiled. Miss Shen's words are wrong. When making friends, one should follow one's heart. Age, status, and position are not important. How can there be a difference in status between friends? Military Governor Xiao has always treated brother he very well. When they were in Jiang, the two of them shared a room and ate at the same table. Military Governor Xiao even bought clothes for brother he. It's a bit too far-fetched to say that they are superior and subordinate. Shen Muxue was secretly shocked when she heard that. Xiao Ju loved cleanliness and was a loner. Eating at the same table with others was already the limit. Sharing a room? She found it hard to imagine that he even bought clothes for He Yen. When did he ever care about other people's trivial matters? Chu Zhao stared into Shen Mushue's eyes. Miss Shen, what are you worried about? Shen Muxue met his thoughtful gaze and couldn't help but take a step back. She subconsciously shook her head and denied. Nothing. Miss Shen, you are a woman. Since you can travel thousands of miles from Shuojing to Liangzhou, you should be a determined, brave, and magnanimous person. Why are you scared about this matter? Shen Muxue pursed her lips and didn't say anything. I can roughly understand what Miss Shen is worried about. Brother, he is my good friend, so I can't say too much. However, I also admire Miss Shen's intentions. So, if Miss Shen really can't let it go, why don't you personally investigate? Sometimes, he said faintly, people should trust their own instincts. Especially women. Shen Muxue raised her head. The man in front of her was still smiling. His gaze was gentle and caring, but it made her feel a faint chill. They don't understand what fourth young Master Chu is talking about. She frowned and tightened her grip on the basket in her hand. She quickly walked around Chu Zhao. I have to go back and concoct the medicinal ingredients. Fourth young Master Chu, goodbye. Shen Muxue hurriedly left. Looking at her back, she seemed a bit embarrassed. Chu Zhao looked at her back and the smile on his face disappeared. After a while, he lowered his head and muttered to himself, it's getting more and more interesting. Shen Muxue, he muttered, Xiao Huaijin, which one will you choose? On the martial arts field, the day training for the new recruits had ended. When Lin Shuanghe passed by the martial arts field, he happened to see Xiao Ju dispersing the southern house soldiers. He went up to greet her and planned to go back with Xiao Ju for dinner. Huaijin, have you been training my sister He too hard these past few days? I haven't seen her in a long time. I have to remind you that she still has injuries. Although they aren't very serious, a girl can't be compared to a man. She should rest more. You should be more considerate. Xiao Ju coldly said, mind your own business. How can this be called mind your own business? Sister, he is my friend and also your friend. Friends should help each other. Mind your own business first. Lin Shuanghe waved his fan. He could sense that Xiao Ju wasn't in a good mood today. Although she didn't show her emotions on her face, but, after all, they had been friends for many years. Some small details could still be detected. Just as he was about to ask, he looked up and saw someone not far away also walking forward. The Liangzhou guards came and went. Other than the new recruits, there were also the instructors. People who didn't wear the same uniform were always particularly eye-catching. Lin Shuanghe said, Fourth young Master Chu? Chu Zhao turned his head and saw Xiao Ju and Lin Shuanghe. He nodded and said, Military Governor Xiao, young Master Lin. It's so late. What are you doing here? Lin Shuanghe asked. I just went for a walk by the Wulu River. I'm going back now. The weather was gradually warming up. With the heat of early summer, the Wulu River was no longer as cold as winter. It was cool and pleasant. Walking at night was indeed comfortable. Xiaoju was as cold as ice. She didn't even bother to respond to Chu Zhao. Lin Shuanghe was a smooth talker. He couldn't make the atmosphere so stiff. However, he didn't have much interaction with Chu Zhao in the first place, so he could only try to find something to talk about. He asked Chu Zhao, "Fourth young Master Chu, what's that tied to your waist?" Chu Zhao followed his gaze and smiled. "It's just sure too." Lin Shuanghe was somewhat curious. Chu Zhao was the fourth young master of the Chu clan and Su Jingfu's favorite student. Although he didn't wear extravagant or expensive clothes, he was still very particular. He thought that Chu Zhao had a piece of jade on his waist. He didn't expect it to be sure too. Was the Chu clan about to fall? Were they that poor? As if seeing the surprise in Lin Shuanghe's eyes, Chu Zhao smiled. He untied the shirtu from his waist and handed it to Lin Shuanghe. Lin Shuanghe glanced at it. It was a flat piece of shirtu. It was naturally in the shape of a horse. There were traces of abrasion on the tail. It was also chiseled at the head and body of the horse. If it was made of jade, it would be interesting and lively. However, if it was made of shirtu, it looked more like a toy for children to play with. There was nothing special about it. It was indeed just a piece of shirtu. "Fourth young Master Chu, why would you tie a piece of shirtu to your body?" Lin Shuanghe returned the shirtu in his hand and coughed twice. "This shirtu is not worthy of fourth young Master Chu's status. A friend's goodwill is priceless even for shirtu," Chu Zhao replied very seriously. When Lin Shuanghe heard this, a mischievous thought appeared in his heart. He smiled and looked at Chu Zhao. "Fourth young Master Chu, are you saying that this is a gift from a girl in your heart?" His opinion of Chu Zhao had changed greatly. After all, Chu Zhao was someone that Su Pingting had taken a fancy to. No matter how powerful Chu Zhao was, he wasn't powerful enough to openly oppose Prime Minister Su. Moreover, Prime Minister Su doted on his beloved daughter the most. Su Pingting's standards were very high. There was no way she would gift a piece of shirtu to Chu Zhao. A girl who could gift something like this was most likely a daughter of an ordinary family. Chu Zhao dared to openly wear a gift from a girl other than Su Pingting. Wasn't he afraid of being discovered by the father and daughter of the Su family? He would have to bear the consequences. How could this not be admirable? Chu Zhao was stunned for a moment. He shook his head and smiled. "It's not a girl in my heart. It's brother he." As soon as he said this, the surroundings fell silent. Xiaoju's gaze fell on Chu Zhao's face. Lin Shuanghe couldn't wait to ask, "You said, brother he gave it to you?" "You could say so." Chu Zhao said, "She was the one who carved the shirtu." Lin Shuanghe turned pale with fright. Despite all his precautions, He Yen still fell for her. She was even willing to give him shirtu. It was clear that she liked it very much. However, she couldn't be blamed for this. She was at the age where she was experiencing her first awakening of love. Who could resist the attack of a gentle and kind, beautiful young master? If it was someone else, it wouldn't be a big deal. However, in Lin Shuanghe's opinion, Chu Xilan wasn't a good match. Not to mention the mess that Chu Xilan's father, Chu Linfeng, had in his courtyard, Su Pingting alone was difficult to deal with. After all, He Yen didn't have any status or background. If Su Pingting wanted to find a reason to deal with He Yen, it would be a piece of cake. If Chu Zhao really cared about He Yen, the best thing to do would be to stay away from him. However, if he didn't hide it, wouldn't He Yen become a live target for Su Pingting to find trouble with? Moreover, Chu Zhao knew that He Yen was a woman. For a moment, Lin Shuanghe, who had always been kind to others, looked at Chu Zhao with hostility. Who is Chu Zhao? He noticed Lin Shuanghe's sudden hostility, but his expression didn't change. He looked at Xiaoju. The young master's dark blue brocade robe had a layer of coldness to it under the night sky. His figure was tall and handsome, and his eyes were dark as he looked at Chu Zhao indifferently. There seemed to be a sharp edge to his gaze. He smiled and cupped his hands. "I've arrived at my room. I won't disturb Military Governor Xiao and young Master Lin. See you tomorrow." As he spoke, he turned and walked in another direction. This Chu Xilan doesn't seem to have good intentions. Lin Shuanghe looked at his back and muttered. He seemed to have come for He Yan. The lights in the room were lit again. Xiao Ju changed his clothes and sat down at the table. During the day, he watched the training of the new recruits in the training field. At night, he had to read the military books sent from the capital. Lin Shuanghe sat at the side and looked at him. Not long after, he went out and came back in with a plate of preserved fruit. He quietly placed it on Xiao Ju's table. Xiao Ju looked at him. Today, the kitchen here made some. Since you like it, you should eat more. Xiao Ju frowned. What's this? Plums. Lin Shuanghe slapped his thigh and said seriously, don't you like to eat sour things? These were just picked and haven't been pickled yet. They're as sour as you want them to be. After a moment of silence, Xiao Ju said, take them away. Lin Shuanghe stood up straight and waved his fan. I'm not leaving. Xiao Huijin, Chu Xilan has already said so. How can you sit still? If you don't act now, Chu Xilan will kidnap Mimi He. It's only a matter of time. The young man replied indifferently, it has nothing to do with me. You, me, and Mimi He went through life and death together in Jiang City. Even if we don't have feelings for each other, we still have loyalty. You and I both know what kind of person Chu Xilan is. We're all men. Even a fool can see what he wants. Chu Xilan can't get rid of Su Pingting, but he wants Mimi He to keep thinking about him. You don't know this, but when I was in Jiang, Mimi He loved Chu Xilan but couldn't get him. She even told me that she doesn't want to get married in this lifetime. Tell me, how much sin has this person committed? Xiao Ju lowered her eyes. Her gaze flickered, but she didn't stop Lin Shuanghe from continuing. He doesn't have the ability to marry her, but he still wants to seduce her. I think this person's conduct is improper. Lin Shuanghe said, my Mimi He is a bit stupid, but she's skilled and loyal. She's also pretty. Other than her family background being a bit ordinary, she's no worse than anyone else. She's such a good girl. We can't let Chu Xilan ruin her. Other than me, you're the only one in the Liangzhou guards who can compete with Chu Xilan. Go and lure Mimi He back. Then we can discuss this matter at length. Xiao Ju sneered. What kind of person do you think I am? I know. You've been wronged. Lin Shuanghe patted his friend's shoulder. But think about it. If Chu Xilan continues to be so unscrupulous, sooner or later, something will happen. Don't you dare say that Su Pingting doesn't have people by his side. Once the news gets back, Mimi He will be in big trouble. I can't just stand by and watch. You can't either. In any case, you two used to pretend to be husband and wife. How can you be so heartless? The more he spoke, the more he went overboard. Xiao Ju said, if you say any more nonsense, I'll have someone send you back to Shuojing tomorrow. Lin Shuanghe choked and sighed. I've said everything I need to say. If you don't do anything, I will. I can't let Su Pingting bully my Mimi He for nothing. After he finished speaking, he waved his hand and left. The room quieted down again. Xiao Ju's gaze fell on the plate of green plums on the table. Suddenly, she felt a little irritated. The pen in her hand paused and actually broke into two pieces. The next moment, there was a rustling sound from the central door. The door was unlocked with a click. The door was already open, but the other party still pretended to knock on the door. Commander-in-Chief, may I come in? Xiao Ju, if you don't say anything, I'll take it as a yes. The person said very naturally and pushed the door open. As soon as he entered, he was met with Xiao Ju's cold gaze. Cough. He Yan stood up straight. Commander-in-Chief, you're in the room. Why didn't you say anything? I thought you weren't here. Xiao Ju, what's the matter? I'm here to ask you. He Yan said seriously, when I train tomorrow, will it be the same as today's training, or will it be the same as before? Although he had offended Xiao Ju today and was angry, Xiao Ju was still his superior. He Yan still had to take the initiative to ask. If you have enough stamina, you can even increase it by 5 times. Why did it sound like her anger had not subsided and was getting worse? He Yan thought for a while and felt that it was better not to provoke Xiao Ju today. He nodded. I understand. Commander-in-Chief, rest early. I still have something to do, so I won't disturb you. After he finished speaking, he was about to leave. Are you very busy? Xiao Ju sneered. What is it? Fourth young Master Chu wants me to look for him tonight. He said that he has something important to tell me. He Yan said, it should be about time. She said this nervously. In fact, He Yan was not sure what Chu Zhao wanted to talk to her about. When Ying Xiang came, he said it in a very serious manner, so no one dared to underestimate him. Xiao Ju looked up at him. Under the light, the young commander-in-chief was unbelievably handsome. His clothes were loose and his skin was like jade. However, his eyes were like a cold lake that had been frozen for 3 years. His gaze was so sharp that it made people feel afraid. His voice was very calm, but there was a slight hint of anger. You're not allowed to go. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.